All right, in this video, we are going to cover the book Hero Villain, Satoshi, the man who built Bitcoin. And we may be fortunate enough to actually have a conversation with the author in a little X town hall space with the community and the Bitcoin community on X. Follow Gavin Mehl at Gavin Mehl on X. And you can tune in live on there. And this is going to be on YouTube when you're seeing it there. So stay tuned for an exciting little review on that, and also we'll make some predictions for what's going to happen in the Craig Wright Satoshi Nakamoto identity case against Copa, which we're pending on appeal right now. Apparently, there's going to be we're waiting just on a written decision from the court, the high court there in the UK, and once that comes down, then there's going to be a prediction made that there will be an appeal, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So stay tuned to the end. This ought to be an exciting space. And see who freaking tunes in and lights this place up. All right, so see you at the top. Zoom. All right, welcome everybody. This is going to be the hero villain Satoshi, the man who built Bitcoin and predictions, and the Copa v. Wright Appeal, X Town Hall. My name is Gavin Mehl on X. Gavin Gregory is my given name for people who've been asking, so I didn't do a name change. That's just my given name. My legal name is Gavin Mehl. So that being said, I put up my X profile. I'm a Californian, love people, Bitcoin, goodbye to the deep state, love doing podcasts, a lot of YouTube videos and getting things out there, man. So, I've got some good, excellent people on today. We may have the author on. I invited him to talk a little bit about this book and also about what's happening in the Copa v. Wright Appeal case. So we got Casey and Mila. So why don't we on the stage with us right now? So why don't you say hello? How's it going, lovely Casey? Nicole? Mila? Are you with me, Casey?
Good.
Yes.
Thanks for having this.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You're very welcome. It's my pleasure. How you doing?
Hi there.
Hi, Mila.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see you all.
Hey, it's great to see you. Looks like you're posting up some YouTube videos. You got some music that you're making about Bitcoin. Keep it up.
Yeah. Yeah. Turned out good finally. Yeah.
Very cool. Nice. I love it. Good job. I invited Alex and Vince as well. And Vince is reading the book. And Alex, it's been a minute since we had a chance to talk. And I'm so glad. Good to see you again, though. It's good to hear your voice, man. How you doing, Alex?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thanks, Gavin. Yeah, it's been a while. Just been keeping my head down, trying to get some stuff done in personal life and business that doesn't necessarily involve me being on social media.
Nice. So we got, by the way, I have one of your, I have two of your card games. So one of them that you'd sent me came back. I was sending it to a place. And so anyways, message me if you want me to do something with it. I have an extra one.
Yeah, we'll figure out what to do with it.
You find somebody that you want to use it with, just let me know.
Yeah, will do.
I'll hold on to it. So, all right. And we got Vince on the stage with us as well. Vince, good morning. How you doing, buddy? Good afternoon where you are in the Miami, Florida area.
Yeah, good afternoon. How you doing, Gavin?
Good.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's good to hear you again, buddy. And it sounds like you are done with the book, Hero Villain, Satoshi, the man who built Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a hard read towards the end. The first half was a little easier, but the second half was a little more complex, and the timeline, jumped around quite a bit. Nothing against Mark, the author, but it needed to be like that, I guess, in order to explain everything thoroughly. But yeah, I got through it last night. I went through it again. Kind of the first half I only got through and just highlighted some stuff. And I just made some quick notations, and maybe you can shed a little bit of light on this, because it seemed like you had the details on your video, on both your videos. You had them like down packed. I don't know if you were reading notes or not, but you were just rattling them off. So that was pretty neat. So, yeah, I mean, I'd like to talk about it, whatever, I can tell you what I thought were a few interesting points, at least from the beginning. Um, one of the things that because I knew about this before, and this seems to be the never-ending quest for me, and this is something about John McAfee that I've known for quite some time, way before I knew about BSV, for me anyway. Was that there was a clip, I don't know if you've ever seen it or not, that he talks about. I know who Satoshi is, and all you have to do is, read the papers, and you can tell from the style of writing and the choice of words, namely being the, the English words and the English spelling on the papers. For instance, favor, spelled FAVOUR, the English UK spelling of it. But then he also talked about the double spacing, after each sentence. Do you recall that? Have you ever seen that video, Gavin?
I have, yeah. That was like a 2017 video. I think it was on a ship.
Yeah.
I think they were on a cruise or something.
Yeah. So I was really against, Bitcoin, everything at that point. So, I was curious, but didn't really care who Satoshi was, just because I was, all in XRP, everything. So, and so the XRP people, and I'm talking about XRP just because I have so much experience with XRP, is that people seem to think that it's David Schwartz who's Satoshi, or at least one of the Satoshis, so to speak. But the way now that I hear it with, in context of BSV, is that, it could only be two of them. I mean, according to the restrictions that that McAfee puts on there, and that's either Adam Back or Craig Wright. Are you of the same opinion on that, or just because they're the only ones who have, a British background and would have spelled those words in those papers with a British style of writing?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's an interesting that you bring up McAfee, because McAfee is the other guy that this author wrote about, and and there may be some sort of a connection there, and I really would love to ask Mark, the author, about that, because he published a book called No Domain, the John McAfee tapes, and I haven't read it. Have you, or do you know anything about it?
No, I don't. No. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because on page 5, very, very early on in the book, he talks about McAfee and his contentious relationship with Calvin. They just basically hate each other. They had, he says right here, John McAfee, with whom I had a very nasty and public spat on Twitter in 2019. So, I don't know if that has anything to do with it or not, or maybe, why he would even put that in there.
Yeah, well, one thing that's interesting is that there's a video from around 2017 about Wright, by Wright at nChain. Or maybe it wasn't 2017; it would have been later than that. But it was Wright at nChain, and he was posting he was interviewed by one of the people over there, and he said some things about McAfee that were unmentionable here on this show.
Mm-hmm.
But
right.
They were not nice things, let me tell you. So
I don't even know that McAfee even cares, man.
Yeah, I don't
he
know.
puts everything
Yeah.
He's talked about some, and he even conceded to that. He said, some crazy things, but anyway, that's McAfee though.
Yeah. So for those who haven't, got into this book yet, there's some couple of interesting, uncovering information that's new that I talked about a little bit on videos, but I'm gonna just kind of break a couple things down, and we can open up. But one of the things was what's happening is the author, he's going and meeting with Calvin in London. He's going to go to this little party. He's going to go to a business meeting with Calvin in the beginning of the book. And he's going to go meet with him at some business meeting. And all of a sudden it gets called off, and it says, no, go to his apartment instead. And he goes to the apartment, and he's describing it really well, where he's comes in, the music's playing, and they've got cocktail servers, and the Calvin comes out, and he's dancing and having a good time. And it's just completely informal. and it just becomes like a social event. And he cuts out early, catches his cab, barely makes his train back to Scotland. He's a Scottish author, and Calvin was wearing a kilt at that time because he's Scottish. I guess he has Scottish heritage, and so he invites him back to that event, that big party event with him and his wife. They show up. It was like a nightclub a few weeks later. He said, "Come back. You still interested in this book?" And so he comes back to the event, and he says, "You'll get to meet Craig at this event." And the author shows up in that Scottish kilt, and he appears at the event, and all of a sudden it's like Craig just appears he writes it like he appears under the door like vapor in the actual event. And then this must have been the event where Craig was doing that dance, that robot dance on the dance floor, because he's describing in the book like that Craig clears the dance floor and does this dance and just ties his tie around his head, and he does this funny dance. And I just picture it like a guy who doesn't necessarily have the best rhythm to music, but he knows how to dance by reading it out of a book or was taught it in a lecture, so this is how
you saw that video, right, Gavin?
I did,
When
yeah.
you were it's like really cringe. It's really, really cringe. I mean, it's exactly what, middle-aged guy, and
Yeah.
trying to like do whatever. I mean, just middle-aged white guy, I should say, trying to dance. I mean, like not just dancing, but cutting up, so
Yeah,
yeah,
so
it was pretty funny.
That's kind of the opening few chapters, and one of it wasn't until, I don't know, let's see, I started making a lot of highlights when I started getting into a couple things that he mentioned about the Bitcoin system itself, in the background, like how Bitcoin is creating a fixed protocol, not middlemen. It served to govern the system. The protocols were were unpinned at a mutable ledger on the blockchain, like a plumbing system of sorts, designed to maintain a permanent record of the transactions that are visible in real time. And the miners are a key part of this in the blueprint, and he describes the proof of work and the mathematical puzzles that they're solving by mining these blocks, creating a permanent ledger. And, once the miner solves the puzzle, it then is rewarded with the block rewards. And he does a really, kind of a good job in simply breaking this down, I think, in the book. And then he goes into the Hal Finney stuff. And basically what's happening is he gets a meeting with Craig at nChain. So he's meets him at the event. They finally meet. He wasn't impressed at all after this dance he did, or I guess it was before or after he did that dance. He meets him there at the event, and he wasn't really too impressed. He's just like, well, okay, we're gonna meet. There was no small talk. It was just kind of awkward. He ends up meeting him at nChain though, and they start interviewing about, okay, tell me everything about the background of all the stuff that's going on that you know. And one of the things like that is super compelling and telling here is the Ian Grigg stuff. And to those who don't know Ian Grigg, I really didn't know much about him. I don't know if Alex, knows much about him, but I met him in London, UK. Mehl, I think you met him there with me. Yeah, you were there with me when we met Ian Grigg, and we talked to him, and I did a video with him. But what's coming out in the book was that Ian Grigg he's interviewed by the author too. So he's talking about how he actually was on a mission to save Satoshi prior to knowing who he even was, because he was under attack. He was under this, just Satoshi, period, not knowing who he was, but the whole concept of Satoshi being under attack. And Ian Grigg started a calculated counterintelligence attack. That's what's claimed in the book. Did you see that? Did you notice that? It's around, goes into around after page 100. So Ian Grigg. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. That's where I kind of got a little confused, because he was talking about so many different people, but then his name kept popping up, and he was his kind of.
So let me give you a little background on this. So Ian Grigg is the concept that Ian Grigg is known for was triple entry accounting, and the triple entry accounting is the concept that the white paper refers to. That is one of the principles in the white paper that in the Bitcoin system. And even though Ian Grigg's not mentioned in there, he's credited somewhat by that creation that he made. Now he's like a he's a scholar, an economist, a cryptographer, a high level, just a high level academic. And the book claims that the white paper was partially inspired by Grigg. So I think the most important and compelling reveals from this book here is Ian Grigg quotes, he says, "I thought to myself that this was really interesting. Here I was in the privacy community who had now thrown away the mantle of privacy altogether. And they were trying to rip the anonymity of Satoshi Nakamoto. And I couldn't even convince Adam Back that this was happening." So Adam Back and Ian Grigg are having a communication back and forth on email, and Adam Back's, he's saying, "Hey, shouldn't we, protect this guy Satoshi Nakamoto's privacy?" And Adam Back is countering him, saying, "No, I want to find out who he is." And Ian Grigg, yeah, Alex, go ahead
to this to give a bit of color?
Please.
Because Vincent, I think you said there was only two possibilities, Craig or Adam Back, but that came from was it the guy from Ripple?
No, that came from McAfee.
McAfee, yeah. So to give a bit of color to that, if you go to the references of the white paper and go to the one that references Adam Back, Back's paper starts with an admission that it's not original work, but kind of like a clarification going, "Oh, I wasn't aware." I don't think Adam Back would have referenced his own work that says that it's not original work if he could have referenced either his original work, his work that was the republication, or the original work that his was based on. Just because it's kind of like a blemish on his record, right? That he kind of reinvented something and has to admit, "Oh yeah, it already existed, sorry." It's just something that I don't think, if I was being an anonymous person online, I would reference my own work that has an issue with it.
Well, the BTC maxis will tell you that, the ones that are, saying that it is back, will say, well, he did that intentionally to throw people off, and.
But then you're opening the door
to say exactly what you're saying.
But then you're opening the door to every single argument for anyone to be Satoshi because, Satoshi would, do something just to throw people off. I mean, by that logic, you can say anything was a reason to be someone, for someone to be Satoshi. See what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. No, and I agree. And Craig, I think it was an interview that Craig had done, and he actually had mentioned and talked about Back, and he had said that, his commitment early on was good and good intentioned and all that, but he just got basically swallowed up by Copa and, the whole BTC core thing, and money was obviously of more concern than anything else. But yeah, at no time did he ever concede that, Back was part of Satoshi or anything like that. So yeah, that did it for me. The only question that I have though is, are there others that we don't know about that are, not the Zabos or, the whole other cast of people, regardless of what McAfee says, that it had to be one of the people that had a UK background or British background, which Wright does. So, because I'll tell you, and I don't know what, how well David Schwartz of Ripple XRP, but he, has all these, and who knows? I mean, maybe it's just show, maybe he did have something to do with it or not. But I mean, I'm leaning much more towards Craig being Satoshi than David Schwartz. But I think that maybe, David Schwartz had something to do with it. I'm not sure.
Let me chime in on that if I could, Vince. And if you don't mind muting while you're listening out,
sure.
Background music there. Thank you. So basically in 2014, while Grigg was seeing what was happening in this space and he's interacting with Back this book is revealing that Ian Grigg, he created a counterintelligence, basically a protective measure to protect Satoshi Nakamoto without knowing anything about who Satoshi Nakamoto was at the time. This is what Ian Grigg is mentioning. And this is something that is relatively, I've never heard this before at all. And he basically, he basically built he wanted to give a Nobel, it was like equivalent of a Nobel Prize, the Turing Award, to Satoshi Nakamoto, an individual selected for the contribution of technical nature in the computing community. And it was first awarded in 1966. So Grigg, he started this counter plan to make this guy Satoshi Nakamoto into a hero and keep his anonymity, his privacy protected, being like an original cypherpunk Ian Grigg guy. And he was really rebelling against the community, saying, well, why would you know, all you people who he had known for years, like Adam Back, why are you trying to reveal someone when you're all about privacy and anonymity in cypherpunk community? Why are we attacking this guy? And so this is where the counterintelligence comes in. Now, to go on to your point there about the other people involved in the Satoshi project, well, that's also talked about here in this book. And it goes into, well, first of all, you know, it goes into the concept of Blockstream on, I think it's 111. And it says, you know, I always thought Blockstream was Gregg's vision in our petition, and why he chose Adam Back as a total puppet. Yet, yes, he had some sort of street cred, but he was mentioned by Satoshi in the white paper, and that of course goes a long way. But I don't think he's good at anything. This is Kurt Walker. Grigg chose him because he could control, in my opinion, Kurt Walker Jr. says. So, you know, this whole concept of this company Blockstream pops up in what, 2014? 2014 it launched. And then it wasn't recently that it just realized Blockstream. That's the whole thing. Their motive is just to block the stream of Bitcoin, block the expansion of Bitcoin. And that's exactly what they've done. And Kurt says it himself, just look at the name, he says in the book, he's quoted here. You know, the one point I wanted to make here was this other party that's mentioned is not only Joseph von Perling, Ian Grigg talks about him in the which is probably the most telling witness. Now, there's a lot of background on the Bitcoin Bell podcast. You guys remember the Bitcoin Bell podcast? It was probably around 2015, where they had Sabo and Joseph Van Perling in an all-star cast. This is giving the background of that whole setup there, and how it's going together. Remember, Craig was on the computer screen, and he was got his picture up there at the top, and then everybody else is sitting there on the stage, and this book is giving the background on who this guy Van Perling was. That's relatively new. I didn't know too much about Van Perling, but it was Van Perling that wrote an article about meeting Satoshi Nakamoto in 2005. And this book goes into detail about it. It goes into detail about the actual meeting with Satoshi Nakamoto that Van Perling claims to have. And Van Perling wasn't a nobody. You know, he's a respected person. I haven't heard from him, but apparently he was doing a startup business at the time, which was, I think, the Liberty Dollar, the Liberty Coin or Liberty Dollar. So, you know, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Gavin. Was he the one that said that when he got back from a meeting or something, he went back and told his wife, I think I just met Satoshi? Was
No,
him?
That's actually John Matonis.
Oh, okay.
Joseph Van Perling is the guy that claims to have met Craig going by the name of Satoshi Nakamoto in 2005.
Yep. And in the book, what's happening is that they're giving context on like how many of these conferences that were going on. And Craig says, I was going to so many conferences at that time. I don't even remember meeting that guy. You know, I'm sure I met so many people, you know, and apparently he was going around with the badge Satoshi Nakamoto, or no, he wasn't. Was it a badge? No, it just gave him what it was in the book. He says, how am I going to remember who you are? He says, I'm going to release an invention in a few years. You're going to want to know about it. He's like, well, how am I going to know it was you? He's like, look for the name Satoshi Nakamoto. And then he asked him, and he's citing in the book, he said, so the name Satoshi Nakamoto is a very unique name. Never heard of it before. And so Van Perling distinctly remembered that Japanese name. That's what he claims in 2005. Now that's never come out in a court testimony, so we don't have evidence on that, but we just have, Van Perling's word on that 2005.
But we also have evidence of Craig going by a Japanese monk here in the 90s.
What was that?
Doshi or something.
Doshi?
It was a name he used in a forum somewhere.
Oh, nice.
I can't remember whether it was Doshi or something similar.
Yeah, I mean this Van Perling one is really unique. I think it's here's the exact quote. It says, "By the time I realized that I was talking about a random cook, by the time I realized that I wasn't talking about to a random bloke, but a genius, and one who had thought this through in some great detail, and this was pretty seriously interesting stuff. What he was working on was truly revolutionary, and I started getting a bit animated and excited. I asked him if he realized how incredible this was. This is 2005, mind you, with Van Perling, and the impact it would have on the world. I was very much excited at this point. He kept his demeanor more calm than mine, but there was a bit of smile on his face and a twinkle in his eye as he could see the effect of what it was having on me as the implications were becoming more and more clear. Van Perling's article said, quote, end quote. That was a 2005 meeting from Van Perling. So now here's the part of the end of it here. He says, so I asked him, how would I know his project from similar efforts? And this is when he told me to look for him. Quote, Satoshi Nakamoto. I'd never heard this before. Indeed, perhaps no one had in 2005, and it seemed not to match any of at all the person to whom I was speaking. So I asked him to repeat it, which he did, Satoshi Nakamoto. So clearly on July 29, 2005, Joseph Van Perling had met the inventor of Bitcoin. And then Wright says, I don't actually remember him. At that time, I was going to so many conferences that, I don't remember all these people I met. So he doesn't remember it at all. But which I find telling, there's that's rather, if you're a liar, you want to embellish, build up your lie right there. It would be a good opportunity to keep your lie going and say, oh, I remember that. Yeah, I was there. It's really interesting how he doesn't claim to remember that at all, even though that's mentioned by another person. So it's not supported by him. So any more context on Van Perling, Alex, or color?
Not really.
Right.
He worked in the telecommunications industry, as far as I know, and then shortly after Craig came out as Satoshi, things started to get a little uncomfortable for him, so he kind of left into the shadows. I don't know whether he's been contacted to be part of these court cases or anything. I think even if some people wanted him to be, Craig might have just said, no, leave him alone.
Yeah, the only way that we could get him, that he'd be a part of things, it looks like, is from Greg. That's how I'm seeing it. That's the connection. Is that he and Greg have a loyal relationship. So he's probably silent and wouldn't work with anybody unless it was through Greg. Greg,
You mean Ian Grigg?
Ian Grigg, yeah. Ian Grigg, yeah. Now, Ian Grigg, again, I didn't realize, I didn't really know much about him when I met him. I didn't really know what he had done in the background that he had put into all this. I mean, he basically...
He also did the Ricardian contract. You missed that out earlier.
What's that?
The Ricardian contract is effectively just a contract that's made up of hashes. It's a representation of the contract. And it's obviously used in Bitcoin because Bitcoin's kind of contract of hashes.
Wow. All right. So check this out. So he goes, now there's right in the next chapter, Prometheus, he goes into the part about Uyen that's Uyen Nguyen. And she's described as like a 19-year-old prodigy that Dave Kleiman had met on the internet and was obsessed with Dr. Wright. She was a stalker of him. Apparently, that's what it talks about in the book. And she ended up, making really great friends with Kleiman. This would have been around 2000 and early days. Somehow her and Kleiman hit it off. And then she was appointed given, the book claims that she was given the private keys to the tool of trust.
Well, a slice, right?
A slice.
Yeah.
She was one of the trustees. No mention of her. That's like the first time I've briefly heard about her, but I haven't seen her in court. Did they briefly talk about her in court? I don't remember hearing that at all. Seems like a really important person. I mean, she actually had the.
Really strange that he would entrust the trust to a stalker.
Yeah, very strange.
Yeah, and when Mark talks to Craig about her, Mark seems to be, at least the opinion that I got was that he was very just kind of didn't really want to talk about her, and he was very ambivalent, just like, I don't know. Last I heard, she's married, she has a kid, that's it. I don't know anything, and very dismissive about her,
Well, I think, well, part of it is that he had only met her, I think, once, and it was in Las Vegas at a conference in this book. And at the meeting, Craig says that, yeah, she was stalking him, and that he told her that he's married, and that, he's not interested in any in her like that. And he basically just, I guess he kind of ignored her, or, gave her the cold shoulder.
She was camping out. She was camping out outside of his hotel room.
Yeah, that's right.
At one of the conferences or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but apparently, she was loyal to him. And now what happened? Then further in the book, 2015. So Grigg runs into her in around 2015 they're having a discussion back and forth on Twitter around early 2015. And let's see, it was the account was called Tulip Boy. That was what her account was under, Tulip Boy. And so Grigg had a discussion with her, and Grigg claims that I'd been talking to this person for a while, and there came a point, although she didn't initially admit it, I realized that she was part of the informal Satoshi team idea, and that I had already guessed it existed. In fact, by that time, I think there were just 2 members left, Satoshi and the person I was talking to, Grigg says. So, along with Kleiman. So Grigg's now kind of like putting the puzzle together in 2015, where he believes the puzzle fits together. And he hadn't quite brought in Craig Wright at all in 2015 yet, but he brings in, well, he was hinting at possibly, but he hadn't met him yet. So then there's another big part that comes into this book, which is relatively, Ian Grigg mentioned this to me when I met him. And that was, so Grigg and Wright have been discussing all the aspects of okay. Oh yeah. So Grigg sets up a meeting with Craig Wright in London at a bar, and they are at a pub, and they start pounding beers and start getting all sauced up and having a good time. And Grigg wanted to ask him, he had some calculated questions for him to see really who this guy was. So there's an interview that's quoted in the book on the CoinGeek interview. That's on page 121. And he talks about how Grigg and Wright met and discussed the aspects of the recent IPv6 protocol so far. And then Wright told Grigg about the size of IPv6 number was the same size as a Bitcoin key. What that meant is that it could be constructed to be the same. So if you could construct them to be the same, 2 people with IPv6 numbers could ellipit curve cryptography directly with each other without any fee exchange. So that would have been huge, Grigg says. And by that reason, he said it couldn't be done. He did not know of any intelligence agencies that are even working on that, and it couldn't be done. And Craig Wright tells him that it could be done. He says, no, that's not possible. But Craig said, no, yes, it is possible. And Grigg, basically, they're having this back and forth discussion about this. So he's look at RFC, request for comment. So when he got home, Grigg pulls up RFC, and he had to look back, and he was right, and he was flabbergasted. And it basically, he says, I was interested in me. It was interested in me because I'd only people had talked about IPv6 for 20 years, and nobody had ever mentioned what Craig told me before. It's the first time he'd ever heard anyone say this, how it worked. So we got a bunch of mates together, and they'd been spending the time thinking about the Satoshi Nakamoto character. And there's another big, huge element here on the next page. Oh, here it is. So we got Grigg got the impression.
What page? I'm sorry, Gavin. What page are you on? Just so we can follow along.
I'm looking at 120. I just read from 122. Now I'm going to 124. Now check this out at the top. He says, I got the impression that Craig's grandfather was extremely important part of the story, Grigg says. Not only that, I found out that somehow the grandfather knew David Rees, okay, one of Britain's most foremost mathematicians who worked on the Bletchley Park during World War II. So born in Abergavenny, Wales in 1918, Rees had decoded an academic career in mathematics before being drafted into the work of 1939. Situated in Bletchley Estate near Milton Keynes, Bletchley Park was a large country estate that was housed by the government code and cipher school, which specialized in penetrating the codes of the Axis powers, especially in German Enigma and Lorenz codes. According to historical experts, Bletchley ultra intelligence shortened the war significantly, and one of the main players in the group of code breakers was Alan Turing. So I was told that Craig's grandfather knew David Rees from back in the early years and introduced him at some point many years later to Craig. David Rees became a mentor and responded to emails for a long time period, Grigg says. So while Wright had many skills in cryptography, but he'd never in his strongest suit, and years later, immediately before 2008. Because of this connection to David Rees, he was able to learn what was needed to make Bitcoin work as it did. And here's the big aha moment that is the big takeaway from this David Rees connection, which Grigg mentioned to me in London. I'd never even heard of him, and here it is in this book. He says, Craig made a very interesting choice, which was not understandable given at times, Grigg says. He decided to use what's referred to as a K1 curve in his code, as opposed to the R1 curve used by everybody else. So the question, therefore, is why had Craig Wright used this obscure K1 curve in his design for Bitcoin? How did Craig Wright, a modest cryptographer, just a modest cryptographer at best, know about the K1 curve? The R1 curve was created by NIST, the American Standards Organization, with an unknown set of parameters. This meant that the NSA were probably involved, where K1 was created by taking the cubed root of 64 and then parceling up the various fractional numbers and putting them into parameters. It was a known method and therefore less likely to be interfered with by the NSA, Grigg continues. So in 2008, nobody particularly noticed the K1 curve in Bitcoin, but Craig Wright had definite reasons for putting it there. His mentor was a cryptographer. This is from quoting Grigg. His mentor was a cryptographer of long time and deep standing, including operating with the UK government in top secret projects for many years. In my view, that Craig was advised to use R1 by David Rees, Ian Grigg says. That's a huge piece to the puzzle, man, that's never been talked about before. And I mean, for anyone who, I sure I'm not qualified, but if anyone's qualified to talk about R1 versus K1, my limited knowledge now from reading this, it says that it's two different types of cryptography. And the main one is K1, which everybody uses, which is an American Standards, the NIST American Standards version. The R1, excuse me, is the one that's created by the American Standards version. But then there's this unusual K1 version, which nobody uses. And that's what Bitcoin is built on.
Just to clarify, they're the same maths, but they use different constants. No one knows why, except for the NSA, why R1 uses those numbers, but everyone knows why K1 uses its numbers, because it's derived from the cube root of 64, as you said, I think.
So what Grigg is claiming out of the book is that K1 is less likely to be interfered with by the NSA because of that.
Yeah.
Wait, Gavin, if you look on page 125, it says, though, it is my view that Craig was advised to use R1 by David Rees, Ian Grigg says.
Oh,
so
yeah.
You sure you're not getting them mixed up?
Wait, where we are, 125.
The third paragraph.
Oh, yeah, R1. That's right.
So the K1 is the one that's most used. The R1 is the one that he was advised to use.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I got it mixed
Oh,
up.
so the other way around.
Yeah.
The other way around. So yeah, you're right. It's the R1 is what Grigg claims that David Rees advised Craig Wright to use. And it's just a little bit of a connection there that a modest cryptographer would even know about it, he's saying. Yeah, it's just not something that anyone would know. So without his cryptography input, Bitcoin wouldn't have been, without his cryptography input by David Rees, Bitcoin wouldn't have been the revolutionary creation that it was and is.
No, wait, Gavin, you know what? On the bottom of page 124, it says Craig made a very interesting choice, which was not understandable given the times, Greg explains. He decided to use what is referenced to as the K1 curve in his code. So it's it's contradicting here.
So
Over here on
that just means that Craig went against what David Rees recommended, which is R1. Maybe Rees didn't actually know about this issue and recommended it just because it's what everyone else is using. But Craig looked into it. I don't know what made Craig look into it more, or whoever
Yeah,
it was.
you're right,
look
though.
into it more.
You're right, though, Gavin. It says the question, therefore, was why had Craig Wright used this obscure K1 curve? So he did end up using the K1 versus the R1.
Yeah, so this is just a missing, it's just like a little missing piece of the puzzle. And apparently it's actually what Greg is saying is the most important part. You see this at the very end. It says, without his cryptography input, Bitcoin would not have been the revolutionary technology, and creation that it is and was. So like, this is like I guess that's like the last linchpin, the entire thing that put this whole thing together. Without that, it wouldn't have happened. So it's like this perfect synergy and harmony of how it came together. Let's see. Right, paused. Now oh, there's the Las Vegas meeting in 2000 and okay. Now here's the Van Perling. If you go to page 130, if you're there, it talks about Van Perling on. So here's the Bitcoin Bell interview podcast, right? Where this is giving all the context and background with this Bitcoin Bell character who goes by Michelle 7 on Twitter, 130. And it says at the beginning of 2015, right, it says, we had a bit of an ongoing conversation. I didn't tell her explicitly that I was Satoshi, but I know that someone else had. Much later, I found out that she was in some way involved in me being outed. I believe she was in contact with both publications and possibly Ira Kleiman and others. So it's of no surprise that Joseph Van Perling, JVP, who since the meeting Craig Wright in 2005 had founded the new Liberty Dollar, a private currency, silver piece of medallion. So Van Perling founded the Liberty Dollar, and I think that was, I don't remember what happened with that. Does anyone know what the Liberty Dollar was? It sounds so familiar. Liberty Dollar.
Yeah, the Liberty Dollar is effectively a stable coin before Bitcoin existed, in that they had their own sort of protocol to allow people to transmit a dollar or a silver Liberty Dollar, because it used the silver standard, I think. It was like a vault of silver, and then people transferred account registries. Well, they transferred the bars between them but they had to keep on going back to the server and saying, well, this is updated. With Bitcoin, it's like you don't have to go to that server. You can go to any of the servers that are running, and anyone can spin one up as long as they can be profitable.
Nice. Yeah, so Liberty Dollar sounds like that was Joseph Von Perling. So this guy, he wasn't just a nobody in the industry. Apparently, he'd built a business in the space, this Liberty Dollar, which is, I don't know what happened to it, but it'd be interesting to look into that. Now, have you it also goes into next about this McGregor connection. Now, I talked a little about this on the video, but Robert McGregor. Okay, so Robert McGregor.
Hey, Gavin, let me just interrupt you for a second. This is that what you were talking about with Michelle 7. This is that famous interview where basically Craig Wright lets Nick Szabo have it and schools him on the touring that Bitcoin is touring complete, and Nick Szabo had like no idea. He was just without words. He didn't know what to say.
Okay, yeah. Let me back up. You're right. So page 127, Las Vegas, October 29th, 2015. There's just a lot of color and context here with this Bitcoin Bell panel. And so you've got Bitcoin Belle, and she was basically known for her activism around the trial of Ross Ulbricht and the founder of Silk Road. And this is, I think, part of the major misunderstanding of Bitcoin, by people like that who think, I guess they had the misunderstanding that it was some sort of a privacy coin where they could do crime or support things that maybe were potentially illegal through Bitcoin, and that was that was not, people who didn't understand, that was the last thing you'd be wanting to do is crime using Bitcoin because it's all traceable.
But the other thing is, Satoshi's not exactly going to tell everyone if Satoshi's kind of like, well, against what they're doing. It's kind of against Satoshi's interest to tell them to stop doing these illegal things on Bitcoin, simply because it's then creating an immutable record for them to be caught later.
Yeah, it's like a trap, basically, in a way. Almost like what would you call it?
Yeah.
A honeypot.
Kind of, but you also don't want to tell your initial customers to get lost. You can hope that someone builds something better, but at the end of the day, these people started using it very quickly. So Craig was probably a bit thankful, but preferred others that didn't really arrive.
Yeah, so this panel is like an all-star cast, and this is one of the biggest, I think, casts of all time in a panel for Bitcoin space. That's Nick Szabo, Edmund Moy, Joseph von Perling, and Trace Mayer, an entrepreneur and monarchy scientist, and then this unknown computer scientist from Australia. So Wright began, he says, first of all, I'm a former academic who in those days did research commercially that nobody ever hears of, which suits me very well. And he continued, I basically work in designing protocols and doing a whole lot of things people don't realize is actually possible yet. He paused then, and Wright says, I'll be back to publishing papers again soon. And I haven't been doing that in a while. It had been years for me now, but I'll go back to that next year. At that point, Michelle 7, Bitcoin Belle, she pauses and she says, well, hold on a minute. To Wright, who are you? What did you tell? What are you? Tell me who you are. Are you a computer scientist? Are you a miner? At this point, it's like inferred that he's kind of unknown. But then Wright says, I'm a bit of everything. And I have a master's degree in law. I have so many master's degrees, a couple doctorates. I forget how many I have these days. And there's a lot of certificates. That's a lot of certificates, she says. So Wright then adds color, or I guess in this, or the book adds color. He says, well, wait a second. She actually was the one that reached out to him. She brought him on the interview. She knew who he was. And she's kind of bidding him like, oh, I don't know. Who are you? What are you actually doing? So he believes that it was all part of some sort of a calculated plan, this interview to make him come out and say or claim that he was Satoshi. That's what this interview is adding color to. He's saying that on reflection, Wright's body language and responsive were every bit as bizarre as Michelle 7's demeanor and angle in questioning, to the extent that it almost looked as if Wright was subtly and publicly confessing to the world for the first time that he was Satoshi Nakamoto, the inventor of Bitcoin, who hadn't been heard from since March of 2014 when posting the words, I'm not Dorian Nakamoto. So this is, there had been explanation that Michelle 7 had actually expected who Craig Wright was in 2015. The reason for not doing so had been they'd met on Twitter a few months earlier. So much later, this is on 1:30, I found out that she was in some way involved to me being outed. I believe that she was in contact with both publications and possibly Ira Kleiman and others. So this adds a lot of color to this whole thing. And I don't know if that person, Michelle 7's still around, but this is where, now we totally skipped over the freaking McGregor stuff, but Robert McGregor, okay. Let me add some context on this. If anybody has any color on McGregor, this is like an unknown character. No information's coming up on initial preliminary search on this guy. It's too confusing. I guess he's an attorney, but there's other Robert McGregors. I couldn't find anything on the internet, basically, without doing a really deep research. So McGregor apparently is in Canada, and he knew Matthews or Calvinaire. Calvinaire's got a penthouse there, and I think it's Toronto at this time. And they go and Wright and Matthews go and meet Calvinaire at the penthouse the very first time. Air meets Wright in person, and they stay up all night drinking wine. The next morning, they're going to go out and meet with McGregor's office. So I guess Matthews calls him up and he says, "Oh, I'm out of town, but you can go by my office." And this is where the real confusion sets in, because there's a company called nTrust. Now, I thought nTrust was a subsidiary of nChain. That was always my belief. But so they're meeting nTrust, and that's McGregor's company. And McGregor's company was set up to build a blockchain, a private blockchain, and he had a bunch of cryptographers there and business people. McGregor was out of town, so they go into the meeting, and it's funny because they take a taxi cab there, and I'm thinking to myself, like, you got Matthews, Wright, and Calvin Ayre in a taxi. It seems funny to me. Like, I wonder who sat shotgun. Who sat shotgun? I think it was Matthews, but I think that would be Matthews and shotgun. And the two guys are in the Ayre and the Wright are in the back. And then Ayre is wearing, like, I guess, jeans or sweats. And Matthews is also dressed way down in like sweats or shorts. And then here's Wright in a 3-piece pinstripe suit, fully decked out. And so they go into a meeting. It's really casual for everybody else. And then there's Wright in there in a full on, suit, 3-piece suit, dressed to impress. And so he kicked off the meeting, and it was literally, it was kind of a awkward meeting basically. And Ayre ended up ending the meeting early because Wright was calling out the developers there, saying, "You don't know what you're doing. You're building a blockchain that's not going to work," basically. And he was completely insulting them. So they bolt, and all of a sudden Matthew's phone gets blown up by McGregor. "Hey, what happened to my office? What's going on? Who's this guy?" And he says, "Do you want to hear all about it?" He says, "Yeah, all right. Tell me what happened." And he basically gives the context of saying, "Well, if you got time, I'll tell you the whole story." And he talks for like 30 minutes to McGregor on the phone and tells him the entire story about how he met Wright in 2008, 2009, got this white paper, all these things about his context from the early days. And 30 minutes later, "Are you still listening?" he says to McGregor. McGregor's like, "I don't believe any of this." And so, "All right, well, I don't expect you to believe it." Then he goes and says, "All right, well, if you want to meet this guy, come out to Sydney and you can find out for yourself." He says, "No, I'm not interested." So they terminate the call. Then something happens. It sparks McGregor's interest again, and he comes back into the picture, and he hits up Matthews, and he's like, "I am interested now." And now at this point, you've got a couple months difference. This meeting was in, you got December. Okay. October 29, 2015 is the Las Vegas conference. Then you've got the December 8th, 2015 Wired and Gizmodo magazine, I believe, is when it was released. And then just a few weeks earlier, actually a month earlier, is the meeting that McGregor has with the author, Andrew O'Hagan. And so he's meeting Andrew O'Hagan in October of 2015, October. So it's a month before, or was it November? It's November of 2015. And he's inking up a deal prior to even signing a deal with Wright. So he's now shook a deal with O'Hagan to get the rights to the Satoshi Nakamoto life story. Okay. And as an author. And then he says, "I'm going down to Sydney." He calls up Matthews and says, "I'll meet you in Sydney." And he shows up at the office there. Sure, I got my dates right. Vince, am I right on these dates? I don't know if you can double check. How these are?
I don't know. I be honest, I got lost going back and forth on while I was reading this. So that was one of my.
Let me double check on the dates here. So, because the dates are like, it's not in order, so you have to kind of go chapter to chapter, right? So it's basically, you've got the Wired magazine article comes out in December 5th. No, okay, wait, hold on. The Wright produced and signed an NDA dated December 5th, 2014, which clearly showed that Wright's companies to Morgan. Okay, so that was John Matonis. Was it December, Alex, that the Wired magazine came out? Does anyone know? December 2015? 29. Rights have been acquired. Because the thing that's adding context here is like around 2000 and Alex is off stage. If you want to add him back up, Mila. So he must have fallen off. Please. So, anyways, what I was saying is
I thought the Gizmodo.
Sorry, what did you say there?
Alex Favel, can you add him back up on stage?
Right. Yes. All right. Yeah.
Go ahead, Vince.
I think that the Wired Gizmodo thing was in April in April or May, and but that was after. God, I'm trying to remember, but yeah, I want to say it was like April or May, because they
Oh,
had given they
no.
they you know they had no.
No. It wasn't April or May. That would have been 20. That's way off because you're talking 2016. It was 2015 December. I'm almost positive here because December 11th, both issues had been follow-up story sheets had been amended. Yeah, so they had already amended the articles on December 11th, 2015. They'd amended their original publications, which I think were like 5 days earlier. So yeah, early December 2015, the articles come out. And a month before that, a month before that is when McGregor, he signs a handshake deal with O'Hagan to get the life rights to publish the life rights to Satoshi Nakamoto, to a book, okay, with Craig Wright. And then a month before that, or a few weeks before, is when McGregor is down in Sydney and he signs the deal with Wright and Matthews to basically bootstrap his company. He's going to give him enough money to pay his employees and keep the office going there. And in the fine print of the deal is where it says, you also give away the Satoshi Nakamoto book rights, life rights, identity rights to McGregor. So, but McGregor didn't sign the contract, apparently. That's what's claimed in this book. So this is like, again, this is all first time ever hearing about this information for me. So it is from this book. And he's now got a motive. McGregor now has a motive, a very strong motive for getting Satoshi Nakamoto outed. So now it's not only, other people apparently, but McGregor has a financial motive, because if he's got a deal with O'Hagan that he's going to publish the book rights, and then a month later he's outed and now it's all over the news, and then boom, O'Hagan then go ahead and starts working on the book and meets Wright, and they start working on the signing with Gavin and Dreesen. That's coming up in the next chapters. So, but the fascinating context here, dude, is the Fed raid, like the raid down there. Did you love that, Vince? I mean, it's like the raid from the government in Australia, and this is, so basically what's happening.
Yeah, because after they outed him, the ATO came down on him and basically were like, okay, we know you got the stuff now, you've been outed, and we want our tax money, and then they wanted part of that grant money back, right?
Yeah. And they had a reason to believe that he owed a lot of taxes, this Satoshi Nakamoto guy, and they wanted all this information. So the article comes out. Wright had already moved his family to London at the UK at this time, but he was visiting Sydney, and he had an apartment there at a high-rise building in downtown Sydney up on the 63rd floor. So he and his wife are chilling there in the apartment, and he's in a yellow t-shirt and a beach hat. Now that's not very normal for Wright. He's usually the guy that's freaking out dressed up in a three-piece suit. So while he's there, he gets a call from Matthews that they're now raiding his office. And so his wife bolts out of the apartment in a car. Wright leaves the top floor.
Well, no, she stayed behind, and he left into this is what you're talking about when they were in the hotel.
Well, in the apartment in Sydney, when the
apartment.
Yeah. So she actually first bolts in a car. She comes back later, but she bolts out in a car to try to find out, I think to go somewhere. I don't know where she went, but she left. And then Wright stayed there. He stayed there and he went down 2 floors inside the building. So he's up on the 63rd floor and he goes to the 61st floor, and there's an office space there and like a gym or something. So he's just in there stressed out, and he hears the feds, the ATO, running through the building, marching up the elevator up and down. I guess, here's the noise, and he's on the phone, like huddling down in this freaking place, talking to Matthews, like, what should I do? And here's Matthews, like in a taxi, trying to come down there to him as fast as he can. And he's like, I just talked to the attorneys. You can leave. And so his wife is now trying to arrange the flights, and he's going to fly to Auckland Airport to get out of the country. And his attorney said, all right, he can flee. It's legal. He can leave. It's not a criminal charge. He's being charged civilly, or be investigated civilly. So he says, okay, he gets his passports together, and he's literally wearing a freaking hat, a beach hat and a t-shirt, which I just he's a habitual suit wearer. If anybody has ever seen Craig, yeah, that's just so unlikely. Him. So he's wearing this funny hat and a t-shirt, and he goes to the airport, catches a flight to Auckland, New Zealand, and now he's out of the country. And then this raid is just going haywire, and they had nothing. So apparently Matthews believes he probably would have maybe been arrested at that time. Even though there wasn't any criminal charges brought against him. So that could have changed history big time, had that gone the way it did. So journalists were posting under Grigg said, I didn't reply. The Vice motherboard. I mean, this is where things get, let's see. Oh, being approached by, I see the Scott. So here's the O'Hagan parts on 146, where he talks about Andrew O'Hagan came into the Craig Wright story after being approached at the request of McGregor and asked whether he'd be interested in writing a book about Satoshi Nakamoto by the extension documents of birth of the new company called nChain. So now here's the connection of nChain. nChain's coming in, and it's not the same as nTrust. Now here's where I still have questions. Where is, I guess, nChain, nTrust? So how did McGregor depart? Like that's is Alex back up on stage yet? Does anyone know how McGregor departed? If anybody wants to come up and answer that, I would love to find out. How did McGregor, there's a falling out, right? I mean, because McGregor had a business deal with Wright and these rights. There's another deal that happened somehow. I don't know what it is, but somehow McGregor falls out of the picture because I thought nTrust became nChain. I thought there was some merger, but apparently not. And
no, didn't they form one of them? I don't know which came first, nTrust or nChain, but I thought they formed like some kind of holding company.
I thought the same thing. I mean, and but I'm not seeing that connection. I'm not seeing that. What I'm seeing is a similar words. You got Encrypt, that was the holding company, but that was an Air Ventures and a Stephen Matthews thing. That was Encrypt. That was 2015. But I guess 2000 and a few years earlier was nTrust, and that was McGregor. And that was the connection.
Yeah. Hello.
Hey, what's up? Who's this?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
DSV Panama. Yes, nice. How you doing, buddy? Good to see you.
nTrust was basically changed to nChain, and McGregor was liquidated out.
Oh, okay. It was changed.
Little by little, McGregor was liquidated out according to the book, and nTrust was prior to nChain and became nChain basically, and then during that process, McGregor was liquidated.
So that's where I'm confused. I haven't gotten to that part in the book yet because it's there's also Encrypt. So
yeah, Encrypt, if I remember well, was prior to nTrust.
I may be mixed up on the dates here, but I thought nTrust was McGregor 2012-ish, and they were working on a Bitcoin blockchain project, which is a private blockchain. And then Encrypt came into picture 2015, which is a subsidiary of the now known nChain. So, it does fit with the intellectual property. They're both intellectual property companies. So there may have been a merger. Does it talk about a merger with McGregor?
Not that I remember of. I should look for it, but wait a minute. I could go through it, but just give me a minute and then I will come back. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. So here's the on page 146 is where it talks about the O'Hagan was Rob's idea. It was brought to the office as a commercial biography, as far as I understood. Rob told me that there was a contract, even showed me the contract, but I found out later that he never actually got O'Hagan to sign the damn thing, Wright says. The initial approach had apparently come a few weeks prior to Wright's outing in Australia, and the reason it all came about was because there was a minor clause in the deal signed on June 29th, 2015, whereby life story rights had been acquired from the person, Craig Wright, behind the Satoshi Nakamoto pseudonym. So McGregor, with the deal that he put together, he acquired the life rights with that. And O'Hagan was brought into the picture, who previously collaborated with WikiLeaks on Julian Assange as a memoir, troublesome memoir in 2011. First met McGregor in London in August, on Thursday, November 12th, almost a month before the majority of the world knew anything about Craig Wright. See, that's a big missing link to the story. So McGregor and O'Hagan had met in November in London to do all this prior to any of the stuff that ever happened with Gizmodo. How is that possible? You know, I mean, how is it possible? But obviously there's a connection there because, I mean, he's now planning, McGregor's planning and are calculating a business deal with O'Hagan. Book rights.
So I found some information.
Yeah.
May I?
Yeah, please.
Thank you. So nTrust was a separate thing, and it happened that the nTrust guy that was a CBO, Rod Hsu, HSU, was talking to Matthews and McGregor and Airy and Wright. No, McGregor wasn't there. But anyway, this nTrust was another blockchain. It was a project to make another blockchain, and then nTrust became basically they had to they didn't continue because it with after the conversation with Matthews, they realized that it couldn't go on, and then the nTrust. Let me see here. It says, within moments of leaving nTrust, Matthew's phone was already ringing in his pocket, and seeing Robert McGregor's name staring back at him from the iPhone screen, Matthews answered straight away, what the F was all that about? Because McGregor was didn't like what was happening. So in the end, it came out that nTrust basically was another business, and then Encrypt was taken into nChain.
Correct. That's exactly right. I would agree 100%. That's my reading of it as well. And what you're talking about is the nTrust was the McGregor company in Canada where they're building a private blockchain, and then that's where Craig goes to the meeting in the taxi cab in a three-piece suit, and you got Calvin Ayre and Stephen Matthews in jumpsuits and sweats and shorts, and Craig's here dialed into the nines, and McGregor's out of town. And so at that meeting is where they said, hey, tell me about what you guys are doing here. So, we're building a private blockchain. And Craig says, private blockchain,
right,
that ain't going to work. Here's why. Bring in your CTO. And the CTO just gets his freaking, lunch handed to him by Craig Wright. And then Calvin says, okay, we're out of here. Sorry about this, everybody. This was embarrassing. Craig Wright completely, they were trying to build a business relationship with him, and it went bad. It went bad, basically, at that point. So, so that's the encrypt. McGregor described Wright to me as the goose that lays the golden egg. So, interesting context here is like the McGregor, when he leaves the meeting in Sydney, so he signs the deal with Matthews and Wright, and he doesn't sign the papers. Weird thing is, Wright says that McGregor never signed it. He leaves the meeting and he's like saying it was McGregor was 47, but he looked about 29. This is what O'Hagan says in his book, London Review of Book Story. And it says that McGregor described Wright to me as the goose that laid the golden egg. It was further presented by O'Hagan and McGregor that a culmination of the story would be Wright proving once that he had the Satoshi Nakamoto private cryptography key, that it would be associated with the key for the very first time. So the interesting part with McGregor, though, is he says at the very end of the meeting and signing the deal, he goes to Matthews. He's like, the deal you just put together right now is like the freaking deal of the century. This is worth billions, if not millions of dollars. You put this together in minutes. He's like so grateful and thankful. I mean, it was like this huge moment for McGregor right there. It was like, jackpot basically. And so I'm basically around, that's right around where I think I'm at in the book at 162 of the proof session.
And then what happened is that throughout the remainder of 2016, what was formerly the Encrypt entity morphed into nChain, with Robert McGregor gone from the picture.
Yep.
And Matthew says, over the next 6 or 7 months, Marco Bianchi, I secured funding from a Maltese fund to buy out all of Robert McGregor's shareholding interests.
What page are you on, Domain? What page is that?
On the electronic version, I am at page 199.
Okay, I'm not sure. That's different pages than I have. So wait, hold on. Let me
Right.
see. 199. Maybe that's it. Let me see.
If you make a search for encrypt, then you will find it very easily.
Okay, nice. That's going to come up later in the book. Then I haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah.
So-
Well, basically, Rob McGregor was bought out and gone. It was just out of the picture when encrypt morphed into nChain.
Yeah, it's funny because when Craig's in a desperation. He's in he's like in this desperation mode. And I remember that he called, he says he called Calvin Ayre on the phone. Calvin's in Antigua and he's on a kind of a limited, almost like a stay where he can't travel anywhere other than Canada and Antigua.
Yeah.
The court case, right? So he's got this, calls up Calvin. He's like, and he's desperate. And Calvin describes him is saying is that he was like frantic. He was annoying. And he was just in this panic mode. And I really wasn't comfortable with the situation. And apparently Craig was just super desperate at that point and going, losing all, he had no liquidity. So the McGregor comes into play was a saving grace for him because he was otherwise going to have to sell out to some like Silicon Valley company. Apparently that's the last thing, that he wanted to do. And,
Right.
and so the whole deal, how it comes together though, is like, it's just beyond, it's just beyond fascinating to me on how a deal like this is structured because you got this freaking you got encrypt, which becomes nChain 2015. But the McGregor company comes out, that falls out of the picture. And that would have, if McGregor wouldn't have been taken out of the picture and Calvin Ayre wouldn't have come in at that point, none of this would have ever happened with the nChain, all the intellectual property. And I started the call here earlier talking about the nChain 800-pound gorilla, my video yesterday, because I think one of the,
It's a great one. Yeah.
yeah, one of the big missing piece to this puzzle is the understanding of property rights. Because people say patent trolls, all this stuff. Say, wait a second here. The First Amendment and the Bill of Rights and God-given rights, the rights that we have, whether we're 14th Amendment citizens or state citizens or just we're men under God, men and women under God, you have right to own property, right to work. Period.
Yep.
It's not about what type of property, it's your fundamental right. And so that is really, really at the heart of what nChain is it's protecting its own property. That's really all it's doing, is it's saying, this is our property. It's protected under patent, just like anybody else does. By we record a deed at a recorder's office, we're protecting our property by giving everybody notice that that's our property. Please, don't interfere with it. You all have noticed that it's mine. So same thing here, though. Go ahead.
It's interesting to see how this ties in with verified identity. This is the interesting thing as well, because property belongs to someone or an entity, and once it's there, it's there. I mean, it belongs to that person, and it's a sacred right.
It's a sacred right.
Gavin, I had a question. Okay, I'm glad you're saying that because, I'm a little confused and as to who owns what. So does Vertasium own the smart contract patent, or does nChain own it? And what patents does nChain own that are of particular interest to Coinbase and that evidently they're infringing on, or who owns what basically?
Okay, that's a really good question. And I'm going to just give you my context from what I've read. All right. And I haven't read all the cases that Veritasium has going on. It's definitely going to take a deep dive of research, but here's my understanding from the surface. So take it with a grain of salt. And that is that Reggie Middleton, for people who don't know, he claims to be the basically the disruptor in chief, which is he created Veritasium 2015, the ICO on Ethereum right after it launched. And he basically patented his project on Veritasium, which is DeFi, decentralized finance, and exchanges. So the exchange of cryptocurrency, he's patented that. Apparently that's really his main patent. So he sued Coinbase for infringing on his patent on the exchange rights of these cryptocurrencies. That was then dismissed without prejudice because apparently his attorney died. So that is like, dead right now, but it could come back. that's like the first one that's gone on. But Reggie Middleton is the second most hated man in all of the space. He was demonized by the SEC in, what was it, 2016, 2017. They sued him for it was securities violations. The very first one, quietly, and I think it's still listed that he's in violation of securities laws, and that has been dismissed, and that case is over with. But apparently he's been really gone after. So the patents, the way I understand them, is that the smart contract patent is nChain, not Veritasium, and that was the 2022. That's the 2022 Dubai conference, where Craig Wright gets up on stage and he's giving the keynote speech. I'm sitting in the back of the freaking room, and I'll never forget. I'm with Xiaowei Lu, and the crowd's just packed. And he gives this notice to Ethereum, and he says, Ethereum, Vitalik, you say that everything's open source. Well, okay, great. I'm going to build Ethereum on Bitcoin since it's open source, it's permissionless. Anyone can do it. So I built the building, and then Xiaowei Lu's there, and he's now announcing at this conference that the Solidity integration with Bitcoin and the language is all done. So it's just now happened. So now Craig Wright then says, so now I'm not going to shut down Ethereum. I'm not going to ruin you guys. I want you to continue on because it will hurt all the little people. I'm not going to do anything, but I'm going to give you guys notice that you need to build your project on Bitcoin. And if you don't, then I just was issued the ERC20 smart contract patent, where nChain was just issued this patent like a few days earlier before the conference. And that's the claim. Allegedly, the claim is that patent is being infringed on by Ethereum. So that's part of the overall strategy. So I think as soon as this appeal comes out, if you want to move to the appeal stuff now, we could maybe, without objection, if you have any more context on the book, we can go to the appeal stuff a little bit and talk about the overall strategy. I think that's going to play out. And that is, there's an appeal that's going to likely be filed at any moment now. It's going to be 21 days after the Miller decision comes out in writing. And when that decision comes out, it's going to say that Wright has a gag order, worldwide gag order. He's not allowed to say Satoshi Nakamoto, okay, which is a jurisdictional issue, appealable, reversible error, in my opinion, because, how can you claim worldwide jurisdiction? I imagine that's what's going to happen. And then he's going to also be ordered that he's got to pay some 35 million pounds in attorney's fees, 850 pounds an hour to Copa. And then there's also going to be a referral to the criminal court for investigation. That's what's likely going to be in this order. I'm surprised it's taken so long for him to write all this up. But once it comes out, then I'll have 21 days to appeal. Once that appeal goes in, then depending on how long that takes, I would imagine that during that appeal process, or maybe after, I don't know if it's going to be during or after, that's when the patent suits will start. Because that's what Wright said at the trial. And it's not Wright that's going to bring the suits, it's going to be nChain. And that's like part of this big giant plan. And I mean, for people who are not paying attention to nChain and they think that, oh, it's okay, BTC and all these other things. Well, again, property rights are like a fundamental right to own property is so intrinsically important. And we're under attack constantly of our property rights are always under attack. And there's a calculated effort to go after Reggie Middleton and these people, who's really just a small guy in the space. But they're going after these people. So we got these massive property portfolio with nChain, and it's, Alex, correct me on this if I'm not right. Maybe somebody else can. But the way I understand it is that if people use the BSV blockchain, then they're not, and they build on that, then they're not in patent infringement. The patents all are protected from other blockchains being used over the BSV blockchain. So basically it's allows people to use the BSV blockchain without, open and honest, and have under the patents that the property that's protected by patent. So it's going to take, Robert Balzan, the guy, the chief IP officer at nChain I've talked to really break that all down on how it plays out and works. But if you're on stage, Alex, anybody else want to comment on that, man, I'd be happy to hear.
So Gavin, I'm sorry, just to be clear. So nChain owns the smart contract patent.
That's the alleged claim, right? Again, just say alleged because it hasn't been determined by a
right.
That's the
because what I always found weird was that XRP never integrated smart contracts into their into their token. And now others have come out on layer twos that would integrate and make it, put smart contracts on there, but they haven't. And I'm wondering whether that might be, the reason why.
Well,
Sounds
I
really
would
weird.
say one thing about Ripple, Vince, that's interesting is they are probably the most well researched, and they actually have a really strong legal foundation, because I mean they've been in litigation so much. I would say that it would make sense to me. They're not like some guy out of his dorm room or whatever. They're actually a serious company, so it would make sense that they've researched the intellectual property rights before doing things.
Right, but I mean, regardless of all the other patents that nChain has, and I have really no idea. I mean, way too technical for me. But I mean, owning a smart contract patent, I mean, that's huge. I mean, that could really be something that could blow up the whole crypto world.
Well, that's
It's
that.
amazing.
I mean, right? Basically, the keynote speech 2022 in Dubai, he revealed the whole thing in 30 minutes. I mean, he revealed the whole plan, and I freaking was just blown away when it happened. It was absolutely, compelling. So if people just go back into that and take some really like what's happening here, the Copa case aside, forget Satoshi, forget all that. That aside, that's not even part of the plan. That's an independent fight. Without that plan, the plan was given at that conference, which was Ethereum. You are now able to build everything on Bitcoin. Xiaowei Lu announced the integration with Ethereum for the smart contracts and the building of Solidity and the language. And now you need to do this. You have notice. You need to start moving all your stuff over here. And if you don't, then we got issued the smart contract patent as of a few weeks before that conference, and it was awarded U.S. Now, again, allegedly, that's the alleged claim, because I know that I'm sure that Tufty the cat, David Pierce, would dispute that and say, oh, it's bogus. But again, that's what the other side's going to say. But the nChain side's going to say that it's solid as a rock. So it's all going to be about what a court says on it eventually. But patent litigation is serious, man. It's freaking letter of the law. It's all about the papers and the words. It's not really a lot of discretion. Either you got it or you don't. And it'll be really interesting to see how that plays out. I think that's going to be
so how would that even work? I mean, does Craig intend on basically making all these cryptos that working as a level 2 on BSV? Is that kind of
Man,
very
okay. So let me
basic
see
way?
if I can even talk. Okay, that's a technical question, but I'll see what I can do so I understand it with Scrypt. So Scrypt, they're the ones. Okay, so Xiaowei Lu, who's a good dear friend of mine. He's a local guy who I'll just tell you a quick story how I even got really kind of into this at all, because I read the Satoshi Affairs, kind of like how Mitch had read, I think I read it in 2021, 2021. And I'd already been into the space, but I had the, Bitcoin Cash, and I had the forks, right? And so I'm like putting this whole puzzle together. I read the Satoshi Affairs, and that was like an aha moment for me. I was like, oh my gosh, this guy looks like he's Satoshi. And it mentioned the Satoshi Affairs, Jimmy Nguyen. I said, okay, Jimmy Nguyen. Who's Jimmy Nguyen? A patent attorney, LA, apparently that he worked with Calvin Ayre at the time. It was found, and said, okay. So I searched on Google, and I found Jimmy Nguyen on Twitter, and he was going to be in Silicon Valley at a conference. So I was like, I'm going to this conference, and I'm sitting there. I go to the Mountain View conference with Jimmy Nguyen. I did a video on it as well. He gives this compelling speech about the future and blockchain and Bitcoin. And there's a little dinner afterwards. And I sit right next to Jimmy, and he and I hit it off. He's like a freaking doll of a person, just an absolute gem of a man. He's like just the most wonderful, nice, compelling person you'd ever meet. And we talk, and he's like, oh, by the way, you need to meet the most important man in Bitcoin. And I'm like, who? He's like, he introduced me to Xiaowei Lu. And I'm like, this guy? And that's how he introduced me. And I'm like, okay. Jimmy walks off and takes pictures, and he's getting, doing his thing. And I start talking to Xiaowei at that point. And then Xiaowei, like, so what do you do? And he starts explaining this. And then he's like, you should come to Dubai. There's a conference coming up. I'm like, okay. So he convinces me to go. I fly out there with him, and that's how it kind of all comes together. But to answer your question with the now I forgot about what you were talking about, Vince. Forgive me. What were you saying? And I got off topic.
No, I'm just saying the implications of Oh, no, basically, how would these other blockchains work? If Craig wants them to be on his blockchain, would they operate as level 2 tokens?
Okay, so
Again, I
yeah.
mean, it's a very technical question. I mean, I'm just in theory, what is that basically what
theory,
he wants to happen?
Okay, so in theory, so basically back to scrypt. This is where the scrypt connection, the point I was going to make, and that is when I met Xiaowei Liu and I started learning about scrypt. And so it was that time at the Dubai conference that he announced that he had built the Solidity programming, the language that the smart contracts are written in on Ethereum is Solidity. He programmed that with a couple clicks of a mouse for a developer to then do it on Bitcoin. So that was then announced. It had been planned for years ahead of time, apparently, with him and Craig Wright. I mean, if you go back and years before, he'd been interviewing Craig Wright as the Satoshi interviews, like interview with Satoshi on his YouTube channel. So apparently it'd been in works for years. And so it comes out, and now with that announcement, then what apparently it does is it allows these layer 2, well, it's not layer 2, Ethereum is just its own thing, to then be used on Bitcoin SV. And I think this new invention with Owen Vaughn that's come out now, and was talked about at the last conference, where Ethereum can do like an atomic swap with Bitcoin, apparently, and that's another scrypt invention where they're somehow on chain able to convert the tokens. And it really I need to talk to somebody who's technical to understand how it works. But apparently that's the connection there. It had like the technology is just now coming together, Vince. And now it just takes the right entrepreneurs, man. Ultimately, like, you know, what's crazy about this space is like, you got this ripe technology, but the entrepreneur's knowledge about it is limited enough. And then you got the attorneys are also limited to where like people want to make money in the blockchain space, but they're like, it's so freaking ripe and new. It's hard to really wrap even like legal minds around what is what and where is the opportunity. But the opportunity lies in the freaking enterprise, not just enterprise, just entrepreneurs implementing these projects that are now the technology that's already laying there. It's laying there dormant and ripe and ready to go. And that is like the freaking Solidity stuff on Bitcoin with scrypt, the atomic swaps. I mean, just the ripeness of the opportunity in the space, if you start to look into it, is so huge, especially with the nChain, the nChain patent portfolio, the long-term vision. I mean, Alex is probably the best one to talk about. I don't know if he's still here, but he's obviously a long-term visionary entrepreneur. So, you know, he's in it for the long haul, and he's got investors that have backed him up, you know, on his vision. Alex, I don't know if he's here. So does that make sense, Vince?
Yeah, no, it does. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. I mean, how big that is, huge. You know, the only question that I may have is you know, that the only place that they may hang their hat on is challenge, you know, that it's too overly broad of a patent maybe, and that Solidity existed prior to, you know, to their patent, and, you know, just because they incorporated it first into their blockchain, does it give them the right to, you know, have a patent on it?
Hey, Matt, I'm going to bring you up if you want to join up, jump in as well. And I just added you up. So yeah, I mean, you know, the whole patent thing with these guys, that's going to be for determination of a court, Vince. And ultimately, hopefully it never happens. And that was the whole message, I think, at the Dubai conference, was like, hopefully it never needs to happen, because entrepreneurs and businesses can start building these integrations. And that's really what it takes. It's us. Are we the entrepreneurs that have the capital, the vision, the mindset to actually do that? Or are we going to wait for somebody else? Are we you know, that's why I like that call that Alex.Sats had on Friday with Jack and all those people was great, because it really like was a kick in the pants for entrepreneurs to get off their tail and say, look, just start doing it. There's so much ripe opportunity, you know, start taking action and finding a way to make money for the users, because that's like the missing piece there. And I mean, Alex, if you're available, you want to jump up, feel free to, man, because it was such a freaking, you know, feel free to request. And also, I see Bo's there too. Bose, if you want to come up, man, it would be great to hear from you guys. I mean, there's you know, and then I'll just give my prediction on the court case. It's how I think it's going to play out here, because I mentioned that as well on the thing. And that basically there's going to be an appeal, like I said, in the next 21 days after the written judgment comes out. So he's going to issue the judgment any day now. It'll be a written judgment. Mehl, if there's any requests, or Casey, please let him come up. If anybody wants to jump up on stage, just make a request. Got it. Thank you, Casey. So there's going to be a written judgment any day now. And then once it comes out, the appeal will come out. Now that appeal is going to go back. Now, I really, don't take this as hope, because it's just wrong. And I don't believe in that's the right version. I bite my tongue at saying this, but because I don't want to give people hope and just like sit on your hands and do nothing. But I mean, it does look like there's clear interference on the case. You know, I gave the analogy yesterday of like a flag football game or a touch football game where the guy throws a yellow flag on the field and it says interference foul. Well, this court case had an interference in it, okay, before the end of it. And that was on another court case against a guy called Edgar Hansen. And in the judgment on the written papers, I think it's 81 or in the judgment, the court overruled Edgar Hansen's involvement being relevant. He says, I don't believe it. Edgar Hansen, he wasn't a bad actor. This is another lie. It's another lie. It's another lie. So right there, boom, that's enough, because that is not true. The court erred on that. There was interference. You know, and so that alone, in the way I'm seeing it, is reversible error. If they focus on that one issue on appeal, and then that, you know, just opens the door up to this case going back, and either mistrial, reversible error. I mean, something is going to happen it's going to have to go back. I mean, you got a clear interference on a judgment that came out prior to the written judgment by Mehl. And so, yeah, that's the thing that nobody's talking about. It's my theory that will happen, and that's just going to take time for it to all come to play. But, you know, hopefully you're hearing it here first.
And another thing, a little thing that I had mentioned to you before on page 56, where they talk about where he had that little ranch in Bangnu.
Are you talking about the judgment of the book?
In the book. No, I'm sorry, in the book.
Okay, page 66, yeah.
No, 56, yeah, 56. Yeah, he talks about where he had a ranch in Bangnu where he kept his servers. That was like 250 miles away from his home in Australia, from where he lived. And what I had mentioned was that, or the book mentions that, he says right in here, I had racks of computers in an outbuilding I converted. I paid to have the fiber optic internet laid to the town, give me the speed Bitcoin needed and everyone in the surrounding area benefited from, Wright explains. So this is when he first started, mining Bitcoin, right? And because it was such a small town, couldn't it get some kind of evidence? I mean, there has to be some kind of town records, something way back then, having a fiber optic run into such a small rural town. Somebody had to know something. There has to be some kind of record. Why wouldn't they bring that up in court?
Vince, I mean, that is one of many, many things that were not brought up in court. Why didn't they bring up the credit card receipt from the Bitcoin.org domain?
It's almost like this case had to be a loss.
Why didn't he bring that up? Why didn't he bring it? Because he talked about that on videos before. I mean, there's this thing here about the evidence here. There's so much left out. Now, again, it's possible that we're not seeing everything because there are summarily rulings that were made and documents that we're not seeing because the whole trial was, that was only on issues that were brought up. Now, there was things that were determined on the papers and we didn't get to read everything. So I don't want to make the conclusion that it wasn't, but we never heard about it. It seemed like it wasn't brought up. And the big one really, it came out later. If you go to page, let's see, it was later on in the book when he's sitting there at the office. Okay. He's at the office in Sydney and McGregor's there. And it's three people left in the office. It's Craig and two other guys. His attorney was Barrett McKenzie. Was it Barrett McKenzie? Baker McKenzie in Sydney? No, hold on. Page relocation. So anyways, there was an attorney that he had, Rob, Stefan, and Alan. Here we go. So during this conversation, it was funny. This is page 98. During the conversations with Rob, Stefan, and Alan, and I had, did you know I was Satoshi? Alan said, of course I did. Why didn't you say anything? I just asked him. And this is Alan, who's an attorney in Sydney and the one that had done all of his accounting. And there was some, posts about this later on Twitter. If somebody, maybe Satoshi had done, that showed this guy's documents. They revealed his documents from the accounting firm about all the stuff about Craig. Why wasn't that added in? That right there would have been the strongest witness of the case. So Vince, it's one of those things that, I guess we can always say should have been, would have, but there's so much that we don't understand about this. And I'm not, yeah, we're just spectators, we're on the sidelines cheering on the courtroom drama. And I hope that this is just taken for entertainment purposes only, because if you like watching the Perry Mason stuff, or you like watching Suits with my man, Harvey Specter, I mean, it's entertaining, dude. It's freaking entertaining. And that's really what this should be, is taken as entertainment, because it is a freaking exciting courtroom drama that's unfolding. And that's why I wanted to talk about it today. So, but they do this celebration. And after they signed that deal on page 98, Craig went to his home within 5 minutes away and returned with a bottle of expensive Krug champagne, but they didn't have any appropriate glasses. So in the absence of everything better, we sat down and started drinking the expensive champagne out of coffee cups, Matthews remembers. They're celebrating the deal with this fancy champagne and coffee cups, so Alex says thumbs up.
That's after they found that paper that was like dated way back that proved something, right?
Yeah, that's after they signed the deal with McGregor. So Wright's
I see. Yeah.
Wright's in distress. McGregor flies down there. He first says he's not coming down there, right? He's not interested. He tells Matthews. And then behind the scenes, he's actually meeting with O'Hagan at this time. And he is interested. And then he calls up Matthews and says, I am interested. I want to come down there. He's like, great, come down. He goes to the office. Wright's office is in shambles. And they find a paper, and it's dated 2006. It says this. He says, page 97. Have a look at this, McGregor said to Matthews. There's a effing thousands of files in here. What is this that you want me to look at? Matthews replied. McGregor pointed out Matthews in the direction of an open level arch file in which there was a document around a particular blockchain research topic. What's your point? Matthew asked. He says, well, have a look at that date. McGregor replied, it's dated 2006. It precedes the release of the Bitcoin white paper, and it has Craig's name on it, end quote. So that was the pivotal discovery from McGregor, who was in complete doubt at that point. He said he didn't believe any of this. It was all nonsense. He wasn't interested. And it was that pivotal point for McGregor to say, I'm in. At that point, it was McGregor's attitude and demeanor changed completely. Indeed, over the next couple of days, he spoke more to Wright exactly about what he needed and about drafting the term sheet that was ultimately signed on June 29th. It's funny that Wright says that during our conversation with Rob, Stephen, and Alan, I told him, do you know I was Satoshi? Alan said, of course I did. But you didn't say anything, he asked him. And he just asked everyone. I had no idea. I'd never considered what it was all about. Although McGregor was in the room when the deal was signed, the signature on that page seemingly was left out by McGregor. So, and then he says, let's see, this is on page 98. My name in the term sheet was in the capacity as vice president of the Sterling Group, as were Craig and Ramona's. Stephen Matthews says the Sterling Group was initially only the party to the agreement. I think Rob wanted to determine more about his entities who would be involved in. Regardless of the term sheet was signed, the celebration began, and they started drinking the champagne with the out of the paper cups. And then here's people, and this is the very end of 99, page of 99, chapter 5. It says, what do you mean? Matthew says, McGregor to Matthew says, do you know what we've just done? So Matthews and McGregor shared a rental car back to their respective hotels in North Sydney. Other than the gravity of the positions and the gravity of the positions start to sink. And you imagine like you're just finishing this deal of the century. If you're a business guy, you're like this life-changing moment in your life. You're just like, you head back to in a taxi with your buddy. And then all of a sudden it hits you And McGregor, like, he looks over to Matthews and he's like, do you know what we've just done? You know, he turns to Matthews and says, what do you mean? Matthews required people worked their whole effing careers in MMA practices, mergers and acquisition practices like McGregor's in, and they don't do deals of the significance of the one you just signed together. McGregor replied, I don't see it that way, Matthews said. It's worth effing millions, if not billions, McGregor shot back. So that's the end of chapter 5. Man, anybody else up on stage, Amila, Casey? Any comments, questions, love letters, hate mail, Mila?
We got Bose here, and we have somebody who I have no idea who that is.
Okay, feel free to unmute and chime in. Y'all, Bose,
Hey,
nice. Okay, I'm back. Oh, Riz, dude, let me get Riz up here, man. He looks like he must newly be following me. I only just, can you add Riz, Mila?
sure.
Yeah. So Riz, this is the guy actually I learned about. Oh, Bose, you want to chime in? Well, okay, go ahead and take it to Bose before I go to him. Bose, how you doing, buddy?
Oh yeah, I'm okay, thanks. Sorry to interrupt with Riz, but what
You're
I
not
was
interrupting.
saying,
You're welcome.
I just wanted to speak to that chap's question a moment ago about how to put layer 2s or layer 2 tokens on Bitcoin and how that would work.
Thank you.
The short version is something like proof of stake networks don't actually need their own blockchain at all, really. So if you scroll back, if you wind back to what a company is, essentially you create a bunch of tokens and then you sell those tokens to shareholders to raise capital, and they keep their tokens. They don't sell them. They pledge to stake them essentially and not sell them. And because there's only a limited number of shares in your company, if the product that you're producing is profitable and valuable and people want it, then if you're returning capital to the shareholders, then the value of the shares goes up. And so that it creates an incentive for people not to sell their shares. And that really is a classic proof of stake network. There's not much difference other than the fact that you get penalized in proof of stake if you try and cheat the company, quote unquote, the network, by getting your stake slashed. Anyway,
Hold on, Bose.
if you look
let me just see about what you're talking about here. Is super. Okay, so shares via tokens. So the question was about how do they build the layer 2s onto Bitcoin, and you're talking
well,
about
I'm getting
tokens. How does it?
Yeah, well, I'm getting there. So if you think about what the product of a network is, like Ethereum, for example, it's the output of the computation that people are requesting of the network. So they might submit a contract in Solidity, right? And the work gets pushed out to the partners, the shareholders, the stakeholders. It's now a proof of stake network, but anyway. And then they do the work, produce an output, and then the output is the product of the Ethereum company, if you like, put it that way. And so you're paying for that essentially in company stock. You're paying for the calculations in Ethereum, right? Gas fees. Now, the problem with this model is that if you're pricing your calculations in company stock and the value of the asset goes up, then the price of the computation goes up. Also, the way that the computational network in Ethereum is structured is in serial, such that all of the partners or big shareholders, the stakeholders, have to duplicate the work. So they all have to do the same work over and over again. It's classic duplication of labor, right? It's really inefficient. It's a really bad way to structure your company. And you can imagine if you had a bunch of executives, say 10 executives, and you force them all to do the same work so that they could all get paid for the calculation, and the calculation might cost 10 times as much as it would if you were just paying one of your executives. Anyway, the short story is you can issue a token on any blockchain and create one of these proof of stake networks, right? Which means you could take all of the Ethereum tokens, issue them as Ethereum tokens on Bitcoin SV, but with the difference and still submit calculations in quote unquote solidity or a solidity-like language, such that that network could output the product of the calculation as its product and charge for it, right? But instead of charging them in Ethereum stock, in proof of stake Ethereum tokens, you would charge them in the commodity money that underlies the basis of the L1, the BSV token, right? So even though your Ethereum corporation on BSV is charging for solidity calculations amongst its shareholders, they're charging in smaller and smaller denominations, the larger and larger the calculation gets, right? So it's a typical commodity. The bigger the market, the cheaper the calculations. And so that's one of the reasons why none of the proof of stake networks work or scale. It's because as the asset price goes up, the cost of the product goes up as well. And it's why you can put think about blockchains generally, 99% of them are proof of stake networks. So you can restake all of them on an L1, provided that L1 scales. And scale means as quantity of calculations goes up, cost of calculations goes down.
So basically, it sounds like so you're saying that the okay, BSV Panama, you want to chime in on this, man? I'm when Bose talks, he takes the whole conversation to a whole nother level. So I'm really trying to digest what he just said. Mila, anybody have anything to add there? Because
I wish I had something to add there. I would
Okay.
be the last one.
All right. So basically, the problem that we're trying to solve, Bose, well, I think that was brought up by Vince, was okay, let's say that these Ethereum companies, they find out that they're in patent violation of a smart contract patent, let's just say, which they got notice of. Say, oh, we need to get our stuff on Bitcoin. They contact Xiaowei Liu, they figure out this scrypt stuff, and they see, oh, okay, I can do this. How the heck is that done, man? I mean, is that what you're describing, or am I out in left field?
Not really.
No, okay.
Not really.
Okay.
So if I've built a business that relies on producing valuable output from Solidity contracts,
Yeah,
on Ethereum, but my business starts to scale on Ethereum, the problem with that is that the cost of the calculations goes up, right? So it makes the product unaffordable. If you're paying 10 times what the value of the product to get the product, you just wouldn't buy the product. So in order to scale a successful business on Ethereum, you actually need to move to an L1 which can scale. Otherwise, no one's going to buy your shit. So in other words, whatever calculations you're offering in Solidity on Ethereum, you're going to have to port over to a version of Solidity on Bitcoin SV eventually. If
if you want to scale.
If it's a profitable business that people want, if it's a service that people want, yeah. And these are just if statements, really. I mean, there's not that much to it, right? They're just if this, then that. And Craig sort of wants to say, well, I own smart contracts on any blockchain. And of course, all the other blockchains are saying, fuck off, we don't care. We don't care. We've got our own shit. But the problem with their shit is that it doesn't work. So it's not that like people who are writing smart contracts or selling the output of smart contracts in the wild in Ethereum to corporations here and there are in violation of Craig Wright's patents. It's that if they want to move to a network which actually scales and will support their business, then Craig will say, hey, I'm going to charge you a license fee.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is that if a business, let's say, has an Ethereum, do you know what Veritasium is, Bose?
I know it's Reggie Middleton's smart contracts platform in Ethereum.
Okay, yeah. So let's use that for an example, right? Because it's a real world example, right? Exactly. They're using smart contracts, Solidity contracts on Ethereum, right? So, and apparently they're a real world business. It's been around a while. They're doing it legit. They got patents and all that. But they're probably, if they're scaling, they're probably going to run into, and I think their market is big business, like enterprise and large institutions. So they've got a scaling demand. They need to have scale. So let's say a company like that, how could they how could they do this?
Well, I mean, it depends whether their particular brand of smart contracts is in demand or not, right? Let's say they're, I don't know, let's say they've tokenized a whole bunch of wheat and a whole bunch of gold and a whole bunch of dollars, and there's a lot of desire for their particular Verisatum smart contracts on Wall Street. You know, and they'll charge a percentage per calculation or per swap. Like, ultimately, if they want to, like I said a minute ago, if they want to port that over to BSV, in order to scale and to hold, like, you know, a percentage, let's say, of the trade on Wall Street, then they'll probably just do it anyway. And then maybe Wright will sue them, and maybe he'll be successful in getting a license fee off them, and maybe he won't. And that will be up to, you know, the specifics of how they've implemented their contract logic. And I, like your guest said a minute ago, it does depend quite a lot on the nature of the patents that Craig has filed, that Wright has filed, and it's anybody's guess whether or not those are good or cast iron. I mean, there's probably nothing cast iron about a patent application anyway. And also, I think Craig recently had quite a significant one turned down or overturned by a court. Just said this is not valid. So, given Wright's loss in court, I would actually expect to see quite a loss with that, actually. People just saying, no, you can't just collect a license fee on just anything. Like, it's got to be specific, and you've got to prove it and defend it in court. But all of this is rather academic, given that nobody's really moving over to BSV in droves anyway. Everyone would rather just build on their own little chains and hop between chains and ignore the security model altogether. So anyway.
Okay. All right, Riz, you're on stage. If you want to jump in and unmute, if you can, feel free to, buddy. How you doing? This is Gavin.
Good. Thanks for having me. I can't talk long. I just wanted to add, Veritasium isn't its own chain, so it needs a chain to run on. So I'm approaching this from a point of learning. So I'm happy to listen. I just wanted to add that one point. So we would actually need a chain like BSV to run on top of, but it's also chain agnostic, so it can run on any chain. So I just wanted to add that point just for clarity. And again, thanks for letting me talk.
Yeah, thank you for adding that. So yeah, Veritasium is not a blockchain. It's a software protocol, and it basically it originally, I think, was built on Ethereum, and now it sounds like it's agnostic. You know, and you have a great. I'll share your.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
Please go ahead.
It was actually built originally on Bitcoin before Ethereum was even invented.
What?
Yeah, so there's an interesting story. Yeah, it's he introduced it actually on CNBC and Max Kaiser's show. Excuse me, Max Kaiser's show. You can see that video on my profile, and there's actually an article I wrote. It kind of briefs a summary of a history of recent events in Reggie's. He's been having some court troubles, very similar to Craig. It's interesting, to say the least, the similarities between the two communities. Sorry, I'm working, so I'm a little out of breath here. But yeah, I think you guys would be interested in checking that out.
I've checked it all out, and I recommend everybody look at it. Sovereign_1. That's number 1 ONE, so with a 0 ONE, and I got it on my screen here for the recording. But that's Riz, and you've got some great stuff about DeFi and the curious case for inventor of DeFi with Reggie, and then also you posted a video that Reggie shot a few days ago. Well, no, maybe a month ago. Where
correct? Yeah, it was a few months ago. The recent one, yeah, that you guys seem to respond well to.
Well, he analyzed the nChain patents, and Reggie's speaking from somebody as experience who has a lot of patents. So, you want to just summarize what he said?
Well, essentially, he's talking about the value of BSV and their patent portfolio. So essentially, what he's saying is if nChain is going to allow BSV users to use their whole patent portfolio by use of the token, then there's huge value in that. Whereas BTC is infringing on those patents. So, you know, there's extra cost to that.
Yeah, I would say Reggie.
There's risk. There's
a
risk
lot of
to
risk.
that.
Yeah, Reggie's probably the most logical, intellectual thinker right now on the space on patents in blockchain that I've heard. You know, he speaks very matter of fact, matter of law, just boom, here it is.
He makes a point of it that he's a layman, right? Like he's learning all this as we are. I mean, he's learning it in real time, School of Hard Knocks.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, further to that, I mean, I think there's opportunity for the communities to possibly work together. I mean, you guys definitely have experienced a lot of the same. What's the word I'm looking for? I guess attacks. You know, this whole open source narrative. It's very misunderstood.
Reggie is probably the second most hated man in the whole space.
It might be true,
Yeah.
but it's, you know, there's a lot of defamation of character going on.
Yeah.
Again, same with you guys.
I mean,
So,
none of it's valid. I'm not saying he should be hated. He's a decent guy from everything I've read about him.
Sure.
And I've been following him since since Cliff High first published the article about it in the Webbot report, 2016. So, you know, I got Veritasium on one of those things way back in the day, man. It's and I really believe in it. You know, I think it's a great, I think it's a great project, man. It's a great thing. I mean, really, it you know, it'd be great to put something together to build it all and onto Bitcoin SV, let it scale, you know?
honestly, I'd love to see something like that happen.
Yeah.
But for me, I mean, I'm starting to learn about, you know, BSV and what you guys have gone through, just through the experiences of what I've seen happen through him. You know, like we share similar enemies, I guess you want to call them. The Copa cartel.
The
you
Copa
know, like,
cartel, yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. So the Reggie Middleton case that one of the ones that are going on, there's a bunch of cases happening, but one of the ones is we're suing Coinbase for patent infringement for $350 million. That was 2022. The case is currently stayed right now without prejudice because the lawyer passed away. So it's on hold. So that one's one. And then there's other cases that are apparently going on, and he's being sued, and then he's countersuing, which
and to further to that, Coinbase actually issued a petition for an IPR challenge, an inter partes review challenge in the Patent Trials and Appeals Board, to invalidate those patents, and they lost, and they also lost their appeal based on lack of merit. So they didn't want to hear it. So
they lost.
They lost. It's linked right under there too. You can see the case. So I mean, there's huge implications in that.
That's huge. Wait a second. So Coinbase did its own independent action to invalidate the patents, and they lost.
And the appeal.
Dang, that is.
And
huge.
that's
I'm not
linked
seeing
in
that
that
yet.
same.
I see your. Oh, there's a bunch of cases I haven't read yet. Other exhibits, right? They got Exhibit 3, Exhibit.
Well,
Okay.
the two exhibits are relevant to the lawsuit, which, like you said, is currently stayed. But the challenge is linked below, and there's a little blurb about it there. If you're reading the same thing I posted.
Are you talking about the Cointelegraph article? Blockchain firm sues Coinbase.
No, I'll see if I can link it below here. Just
put
give me
it
1
below
second.
this pinned chat, like the pinned tweet on my profile. Put it there so everybody can see it. Riz, what's your background?
Skateboarder, businessman. I owned a skateboard distribution. I worked in marketing for Element Skateboards in Canada. So yeah, it's a different background than this, but I definitely became interested in this a while back, and you know, Bitcoin's lost its way. There's no question about that. The whole industry's changed. So you know, I've just been learning as much as I can about the industry.
Dang,
Due diligence.
To Tony Hawk, Canadian Tony Hawk, you know, entrepreneur.
I wouldn't go that far.
Not that far. Maybe a freaking Christian. What was the other? Peralta, Stacy Peralta.
Sure.
We're all aboard, man. So growing up in California, that's what we do, as kids is skateboarding. So skateboarding and surfing. So it's it sounds like you're probably a coast guy or something in Canada. What part of Canada?
Well, it used to be Toronto, but I've long left there.
But that was a skateboarding town. It sounds like growing up.
Yeah, Vancouver, Toronto.
Nice. And so now, when you said that Veritasium was built on Bitcoin, can you add some context to that?
He originally built it on Bitcoin. And again, this article here, The Curious Cases of the Inventor of DeFi, if you actually open that up, there's a few links.
Okay, is that on the tweet now, or where should I find
No,
it?
I'm sorry. I'm actually looking for the original tweet. But you know what? Everything is in this article. So
Okay.
everyone should read this article. So the inter parties review that I was just talking about is linked in this article as well, near the end of it, actually. So that's a $350 million suit against Coinbase. And then they lost that challenge, and that could open them up to damages, 3 times damages. So I'm not a lawyer, so I can't necessarily comment too much on that, but it's not a pleasant position to be in for Coinbase. And I believe it's public, so I don't know what the shareholders think about that either.
Yeah. Well, they got warning in the Coinbase initial IPO that if you remember the initial IPO, they said, well, we could go out of business at any moment if the guy comes forward who's Satoshi Nakamoto and starts selling off his coins. And that they said our price could go away. But fortunately, Craig Wright is not that guy. He's not the guy, according to the court, that's liable for any of that. So they'll have to, if somebody sells off those Satoshi coins, it seems like a lot of those have been selling now. If you know aware of that, but they've been selling off like the freaking mass amount. Did you know that the Satoshi era coins have been selling? Riz, I don't know. Anyways,
Oh, sorry. No, I mean, honestly, I'm learning a little. I'm new to the BSV story, and over the last few months,
BSV aside, I mean, just in the news, someone, obviously not Craig Wright, because the court said it wasn't him, but somebody has been selling the Satoshi era coins by the mass, dumping them on just BTC. That's all they're dumping. So, that it's happening by 50. They do blocks of 50 at a time. Boom, boom, boom. Which is about $3-4 million. And it's a lot. It's a high number. I don't know. Somebody was doing a good job at doing research on that in the past. I don't know who it was, but I think he's not around anymore. So maybe Satoshi is, but yeah. So that's been happening, and that's in the IPO. The initial warning in their IPO is that if that starts happening, it could put them out of business. Bose, do you have your hand up? Please jump in. Bose, Mr. Bose. Everybody tune in. Oh, go ahead. No. Friday, Alex.Sats has got a show. It's going to be on Friday, the CoinGeek live stream, which is or the CoinGeek show. It's going to be 12 o'clock. And it looks like he's got a dude called ARM, which is DXS Exchange coming up. Definitely interesting to hear what that guy ARM has to say, because DXS is well, I don't know. I don't know how to comment on it, but it's an exchange. Maybe it's built on Bitcoin. I don't know if it's on there or if it's just I don't know. I don't know how it works, but apparently it's an exchange that is doing micropayments and very, international. And so the guy's going to be on there, the main engineer, the main guy on Friday. And I haven't really heard much from them publicly too much. So it'll be interesting to hear. So tune in on Friday to see what that's all about on Alex's show for sure. Okay. Mila, Casey, anything to add here? Color, context. Bose has his hand back up. No? Bose doesn't. Okay. Casey, thumbs up.
Yeah.
If anybody else wants to jump in and add anything, Riz, we should definitely keep this conversation going. There's an opportunity for entrepreneurs right now in the space that is unprecedented. And
you know what? Actually, I'd love to add one more thing.
Please.
So there's been some ideas kicked around. Reggie's introduced this idea called Project Sunlight. So you guys also may be interested in something like this. But first, it started out as something called Proof of Productive Effort, and it's an idea that he had to bring up to open the open the opportunity up for people to submit or identify patent infringement. So normal people that notice somebody's infringing could go on this platform and highlight it basically where others would see it. It's evolved from that into law because of all these nefarious court cases that have been happening. So the idea is to shine sunlight. So to take all the documents in these court cases and upload them to AI, because they can swallow it and read it in real time, every word. So the idea is to have AI review the cases and see if there's any errors and if the ruling is just and true. So I just wanted to put that out there because I think, again, you guys share similar plights. Yeah,
Nice.
keep an eye out for it.
Besides skateboarding and being a business owner, what is your, how did you get introduced to the Bitcoin and blockchain space, Veritasium space?
Well, I mean, I guess everyone has their story, but obviously the housing crash and the market crash back in 2008, and seeing how volatile it is and corrupt, I guess is another word for it. Yeah, I don't think it's long for this world. So there needs to be an alternative. So I guess that's how I found it.
And then you found Bitcoin shortly thereafter. That's 2008. So was it the white paper you read right after
Oh,
that?
no, I wasn't that early to it. Life definitely keeps you distracted. I think I heard about it maybe 2016, 2017. Like I was never lucky enough to make a shit ton of money out of it, or dumb enough to buy meme coins, which could have made me a lot of money as well. But I'm definitely interested in the tech and the freedom that it allows.
Was it the web bot that got you into Veritasium, or what was the?
Yeah, that definitely. Yeah, I guess actually that was partly it. I didn't come in at the ICO. I came in after. I watched it progress. I watched the proof of concepts happen. In 2008, Reggie actually he introduced a gold-backed mortgage. So using gold as a stable store of value, which you could get yield from by loaning it to for a mortgage. He did that on the blockchain, 2018.
Hey, I know Casey Nicole. She followed that closely, and there was a guy called Joe. Joe. What's his name? Anyways, he's on YouTube, and he'd bought a helicopter with the money I think that he got from Veritasium. What's the guy's name? Joe, Casey?
Oh, Snippy, I think.
Joe
Jay
Snip.
Snip.
Yeah, Joe Snip 4.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
he bought a helicopter and he bought all sorts of stuff, man. He cashed in big time.
yeah, that was not me.
Oh
That's
man,
for
that
sure.
was cool to watch that guy. He got a helicopter. He's flying a he got a helicopter license. Bose, you're back up on stage with your hand up.
Must be a bug.
So back to you, Bose. Back to this concept on the on building businesses on the blockchain, man. You made a really good point, and I'm trying to wrap my head around how it would work. We talked about Veritasium. They've got a software platform, and they say that they want to build on Bitcoin SV. How can that conceptually happen?
So I'm not familiar with this, but I mean, just in simple terms to conceive it, I guess the point is that if you own Veritasium shares, you stake them on your computer, then your computer is doing some of the calculations for the Veritasium network. So if people submit calculations to the Veritasium network, then as a shareholder of Veritasium, you get paid. That's, I think, the simplest way of putting it. But like, I'm happy to be corrected on that.
I mean, well, I have to make something clear just because of the SEC's attack against Reggie. No token holder is a shareholder, so there's no link there whatsoever. In fact, the tokens right now have no utility. because the SEC severed that utility. So, but there was plenty of it. I mean, he tokenized assets. I mean, he's got a lot. He's got a pretty interesting patent if you look at it. But I guess my point is it's, it was claimed to be a security. No claims from the SEC against Reggie have ever been proven. So there's just open smear claims, basically. So yeah, the point I'm making is no token holder is a shareholder because it's not a security. It's a utility token.
I would fundamentally take issue with that, and I would ask you the question of like, is the Veritasium token something that can be traded? Does it go up and down in value? Are there people who hold the token?
Secondary markets, sure. As of now, all Reggie's tokens have been taken, so they've been seized. So, and again, as of right now, there's no utility, so there's no use case. There's nothing but speculation.
I guess the most important question out of all of those, although I think all of those are relevant questions when determining something is security or not, the most relevant question might be, did Reggie make a promise to people who bought the Veritasium token? As in, did he promise that there would be a limited quantity of Veritasium tokens? Was it strictly limited supply?
Actually, before the suit, he held 98% of the supply and only 2 million tokens.
Was there a cap?
No.
Was the supply?
It was made clear in the terms and conditions, and there's documents to prove this, clearly stating that it's not a security. There's no promise to gain money. It's simply like a gift card. Prepaid service fees is actually how it was marketed.
And there's no quantity. There's no supply cap. Is that right? There's no limited quantity of Veritasium tokens.
Well, there is now. I mean, I guess there was 100 million, and now there's only 2 because 98% was seized.
But there is 100 million only in circulation.
There was, yes.
Okay, and Reggie essentially made a promise.
It's software. This is software. This is not. And this is a private company.
Regardless. And so Reggie made a promise to buyers that there would only be 100 million in circulation, period. Is that correct?
No, I can't say I can answer that.
Right. Well, anyway,
from my understanding,
that promise would qualify him for having issued a security. It's the promise that he's making to the buyers that issues that qualifies as a securities issuance.
Well, I'm not a lawyer, and I can't say he ever made a promise like that. I'm not sure I can comment on that specifically, but I can tell you that no claim against him from the SEC has ever been proven.
Did the case get dismissed?
The case was it wasn't dismissed. It was settled, but basically he was forced. I mean, all his funds were locked up, similar to Debtbox. The Debtbox case had a temporary restraining order put against it, but it was done questionably. I believe the same thing happened to Reggie. His funds were all locked up, and he had no capital to be able to fight the SEC. I mean, we're talking about Ripple spent $100 million so far. I mean, he's a little guy.
Wow. So basically, it sounds like it's just not been. It was settled, so he's got a judgment against him.
Okay. It's not a judgment against him. Actually, it was settled without any judgment made against him. So there was no admittance or denial of it. It was just simply settled without any of that being stated.
Right.
And again, I'm not a lawyer, but you can look at the case. Everything is public.
Yeah.
In fact, it's all in that same article that I'm talking about.
Seems like he could file a motion to expunge the record if it's harming his record there, get it off his freaking.
Well, let's put it this way. There's a lot of new laws that are happening, and there's a lot of questionable things that are coming up from the SEC. So, I mean.
Yeah. I mean, that's
again, I'm no lawyer. But
doesn't seem right that he's being held liable or something, or maybe they're tarnishing his name. So if it's not final.
sorry, he's been punished, right, by having 98 million shares of his company taken away from him. He didn't admit guilt, but he received a punishment.
Correct.
Right. So he's guilty. He just settled.
I see.
Again,
So we
I'm
gave
not,
him
And you
again,
can
90.
twist it any way you like, and a lot of people do, and it's fucking frustrating. Excuse me.
well, read it. Read the judgment, read the settlement for yourself, and you tell me what you think about it before we comment
Yeah.
publicly, because
No,
at this
no,
point it's only assumption.
it's not fair for us to comment. I get it because we haven't read everything in it. So, but you know, I think your point, Bose, in theory is good, that we understand what securities are and what they aren't. And Bose, what can be done about that for entrepreneurs going forward, so that doesn't happen?
They just admit that they're securities.
Okay, and then basically do the licensing process with the SEC.
Just make sure, yeah, they just register as securities. There are securities offerings. There are certain rules that go with that.
Yeah.
I think one of the main ones is that you can't sell securities to unnamed recipients, which makes it a problem for digital cash. But, you know, there's limits to that as well.
For clarity, though, again, this is not cash. It's not a chain. It's software.
Yeah. No,
They
not.
sold software. They sold prepaid service fees to software, similar to how Adobe and Microsoft Office, they sell their services. It's no different than that. He was selling his services, and that's how it was marketed. That's how it was promoted. He tried to work with the SEC many times. He definitely reached out and tried to do it, and they just ignored him. He had a deal he had a memorandum of understanding, I believe it's called, with the Jamaican Stock Exchange. And as soon as the SEC got wind of that is when they attacked him. Again, his story is way more complicated than I can explain, and I'm not here to try and make and take this chat over by talking about Reggie.
Yeah, no
I'm
problem.
just
I mean, in change, you know, it's kind of like change the constant topic here away from veritasium, just in general.
Mhm.
So, right, because we don't understand enough about it, right? So it's not fair to talk. But in general,
sure, and I'm just encouraging everyone to read up
Yeah.
on it, because I feel we
Totally.
share similar communities
Totally.
and similar
Good idea.
plights.
You should. But in general, like entrepreneurs going forward, the point is that going forward, you know, on other businesses that, you know, may need to be registered as securities, that we do. Like if an entrepreneur is going to do some sort of a business, because it could happen now, you know, like the ICO thing is like quiet, and seems like, I don't know, man, there's all the stuff that Alex had talked about on Friday on that other show with all the businesses. Bogus, did you get a chance to listen to any of that stuff about the businesses they talked about on the show on CoinGeek on Friday? On the
No, I
business.
missed it. I was away.
Okay. Anyways, there's a lot of basically the discussion was that it's like a challenge to entrepreneurs in building businesses to make money for users. And, you know, I mean, they may all be securities. That's possible. So that could be a problem. But at the same time, you know, it's just a challenge that seems to be out there that they were making. Then users need to make money, you know, with whatever they're doing. That's what's going to draw people in. So has to be figured out somehow. So yeah, if anybody else wants to chime in, Alex, we're going to wind down here in a minute and wrap this space up. Alex or Matt, anybody else? Okay, Bose keeps coming up. Vince, you're still on stage, buddy. If you want to chime in, BSV Panama, Casey, Mila.
Hello.
Hey,
Can
buddy.
you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, no, thanks for the space and very nice. And I just an encouragement for everyone who wants to dive deep into this hero, villain, Satoshi, the book. Please get the book and read it, because you will discover a treasure trove of information that until now very few have been having access to. And I think it's very interesting. I think it's well written, very interesting, and it will benefit everyone who wants to know better what has been happening with Craig Wright, aka Satoshi Nakamoto, and the subtle and pernicious ways that a lot of people have tried to use in order to shut him up, basically. As for the future, I think he's gonna win. I'm still completely adamant about that. So welcome to hero
what's your-
villain Satoshi, the man who built Bitcoin, Craig Wright, aka Satoshi Nakamoto.
And what's your prediction? What's your prediction on how he's going to win? Matt, I just added you up. Come on up.
Appeal, and probably, well, maybe not a dismissal, but a correction on what has been the judgment. And at the technological level, of course, he's already winning. So I don't really have to elaborate much on that. I mean, it's pretty obvious. So, and on the legal level, after the appeal and everything is gonna take a long time, But for sure, this is not with this judgment here now that is coming out. The story is not finished, and Satoshi Nakamoto, Craig Wright is not going away for sure.
Nice. Very good words of encouragement. So
yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Love it. Let's go over to Matt.
And about securities, about securities and legalities and stuff like that. There are people who try to entice people to build on the BTC chain, which is basically actually it's already an illegal chain, and it's a chain that's gonna have to disappear. So it's very important to make a distinction between who wants to build what on what, and how they connect identity and legally registered securities. Very important. This is a key element that never has to go away from our attention, because if we want the long-term success, we have to take into account identity and legal compliance. And the only one that's doing that is BSV blockchain. So anybody who is shilling products on BTC or basically any other shitcoin down there working on blockchains that don't work. By the way, XRP doesn't even have a blockchain. How can they make smart contracts on XRP if there is not even a blockchain on XRP? So it's all these things. A lot of them people just don't care or don't know, and they just look after the little pump and dump and make a little money out of it. But hey, we are looking for the long term. We are looking for the legally compliant structure that is going to be there 150, 200 years from now. We want something that works well, and for now, the only one that is, and I think for the next 200 years or more, it's going to be BSV blockchain. So everything else has to be very thoroughly analyzed before jumping in and before believing in people who are shilling things about other blockchains and other products that are not going to be legally compliant.
Yeah, great wisdom here that that you drop on us. It's very very compelling wisdom. So, and I want to go over to Matt.
Thank
you. Be love, be you, my man down there in Florida. Matt, how you doing, bro?
Hey, Gavin. Great to hear from you.
Great to hear from you.
Doing good. I figured maybe I'd comment a little bit on the thing that nobody ever wants to talk about, which is price action and technical analysis. In our last interview, we did touch upon that a little bit at the end, so I could kind of, if you'd like, I can touch upon what I'm seeing.
Please, my man. You shed great insight on that, so I'd love to. Please.
Oh yeah, big passion of mine, and a great way to track like the health of the trend, especially BSV. So in our interview, my biggest concern that I pointed out was a macro triple top for BTC, being the last all-time high, which was a double top, and then here we are now getting strongly rejected from about 71,500. That seems to be the level that can't be broken. And as we can see, the entire market is just on the hinge of what BTC is going to do. So we've had a nice correction down to about 53K. Just a few months ago, that was a dream for most people in the market to get to that price. and now a lot of people are kicking and screaming after we've already tapped it and bounced $5,000 from there. So I am of the impression, in my opinion, not financial advice, that in general the bottom is in for this market. If there's going to be a continuation of a bull market cycle, then the bottom is pretty much in. The Right now the cost to produce or mine a BTC is around $47,000. So that's like the perhaps the true value of it. So anything as long as price doesn't go below that and stays above 47K, I'm pretty optimistic from now till the end of the year. And we've seen what that's done to BSV with about a 1,500 to 1 swap ratio, and I'm still, as I said in our interview, I'm still thinking that's one of the greatest investment opportunities of all time. Not financial advice, but overall, I think it's a great time to be dollar cost averaging, and as much as I have my vision and ideas for entrepreneurship and the things that I want to build with BSV. To me, I just feel very much at a standstill. I feel like the market's at a standstill until we see some capital, flow back into the space and maybe some more mainstream attention and adoption. I'm very much focused on where the trend is going in the markets, and I guess to cap it off, um, this is definitely one of the most challenging times to ever be an investor. I think in history. I mean, it's just this is not like buying the bottom of a bear market. There's so much mixed signals across the board, from precious metals to the S&P hitting all-time highs, and the Dow Jones about to hit an all-time high again. It's just mixed signals across the board, and how much longer can this AI trend really be stretched out? So if you're out there feeling like, shoot, should I be buying BSV under $40 a coin? It kind of hit me yesterday. I think that's the only opportunity for the people right now. I mean, I would look at any other, altcoin or BTC, and just feel like everyone's priced out of real opportunity. But to have a real commodity-based proof of work blockchain that that with a supply cap of 21 million, that is doing what it's been doing, and we're seeing what Terranode is doing, and it's priced at $40 a coin. I mean, I got a target around $20. To me, that's like a back up the truck level, but I don't know. I think from now till then, if it happens, is fair game for dollar cost averaging. That's my opinion. That's what I'm doing. And I'm optimistic for the end of the year. Keep an eye on the Olympics coming up. I think that's going to be a pretty big time. It's going to have a big effect on the markets and the world stage, and that's at the end of this month. And then that's not even the election. So anyway, that's my quick TA recap. I'm curious if anybody has any thoughts they'd like to share as well, or what do you think, Gavin?
Well, thanks for sharing that, because it's really interesting perspective on the charts and how it all comes into play. I mean, on the technicals, it's like, have you considered at all the, I look at it more of like the legal sense and the regulatory side, so like on the regulatory side, are any of these other blockchains, or maybe like a tokens, do they have, any, protection, legal regulatory compliance behind them that could be another an investment opportunity that may be better, out there? Or because I think that's
No.
it's something that should be considered. If not, what is your perspective?
Oh yeah, I mean, this whole call was great, and it's extremely relevant. This is the thing that the big boys and girls are talking about. Is the legal precedence for the technology. This is not what the Solana degens want to be talking about. And so they might make some money doing that, but I still see the biggest opportunity sitting with nChain. And if you compare their patents to IBM, you look at the top 10 companies to hold patents. I mean, they're in there, and I don't see any other blockchain uh, even close to that. So, Veritasium, I've also been following Reggie Middleton. I don't personally hold that token. It's really expensive if you ask me, but for not having utility. But I love what he's he's fighting the good fight and doing great work. And if he really holds this big bad DeFi patent, that's gonna that's gonna be like the Tether atomic bomb for the crypto market. So I'm all for atomic bombs for the crypto market. I'd like to see Tether implode. I'd like to see Reggie succeed, especially against the SEC. Okay. Just to answer your question, like really is like the whole ETF approval for Ethereum, and all of this like drama against Ripple over the years, it's just, and now what's happened, Veritasium coming to light more so than ever. It's just like, it just goes to show that all the world is a stage, and all of life is an inside job. Meaning like, the only thing we can control is our internal reality. There are players here in the game that have been playing this game for a long time that are really, uh, guiding the direction of humanity. And so we can't control that. So the SEC just basically giving the green light to continue the Wild West of crypto, for me, just shows that like all bets are off, and this whole thing is at best scripted, but it's still kind of a shit show. So stick to your guns, and know yourself, be loved, be you. Keep building out your vision for the technology, but also have a sound strategy for investing in it. Maybe learn charting a little bit, and put some time in each day so that you're on the right side of the coin and the right side of the trade. Because timing is really important. We're not just working on our own timelines, but there's a massive timeline that's at play. And the more we understand it, I think the more likely we are to win in our personal lives and as a collective.
Yeah, Matt, and to add some color to that, there's what you're saying is really, I think it's spelled out in the interview I did with Jack Pitts, the second one, which would have been the end of May. And he talked about his experience in 99, 2000, going into the tech bubble, being a stock trader, stock picker. And he said that he's shorting all these frauds. He's shorting these companies that were obvious frauds. They were clearly a scam. So he'd short them, and he would get wrecked. He said he kept getting wrecked on these shorts. He's like, so the scam that they would go on, he's like, never underestimate, how stupid the market can be around a fraud, his experience. And then, eventually it popped, and he eventually killed it on eBay and Amazon and Google and these companies. But leading up to that, it was like this brutal time of shorting all these fraud companies that he got wrecked on, so it seems like it's very relevant to right now.
100%. Like if you're trying to short the S&P, like you're not doing very well. So the show will go on until, it doesn't make sense, but right. There's that famous expression that the market will stay, the market will stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent.
Yes, that's it. The market will stay rational. Yeah.
I love that interview with Jack Pitts. He's hilarious because, I don't know. You guys just have a great way of approaching the whole industry, and just the drama and the climate, all the things that's going on.
Yeah, his context.
I mean, the plot.
His context, I'd say he has one of the most unique. I think it is the only guy with that type of experience, real world experience of the old world, surviving and thriving in the .com bubble, real world experience, and that right on Wall Street to now this. And the entire, he's making a commitment long term. He's like, I'm in it for the long term. I'm not in it for the short term, but in the long term, that's his vision. And he adds a lot of context and color. So if anybody hasn't watched that, I encourage you to. It's really deep. And looks like we got Emilio up on stage as well. So if you want to jump in, Emilio, I see you there, man. How you doing, buddy? You're my friend up in Spain, not in Spain, but you're in the Garden State. That's right. New Jersey. So if you want to unmute, feel free to. It looks like you're
Portugal.
Mila?
I think he's in Portugal, no?
Perhaps he is, yeah. Sounds like well, he's muted still. So if you want to come up, Emilio, feel free to. Interesting context for Matt, though, Mila. Anything to add to any of this, Mila, Casey, that you'd love to hear what's on your mind?
One thing that crossed my mind earlier was I remember that over a year ago, there was somebody buying really extreme loads of BSV. And I remember somebody who was watching that and talking about it on X. And then the question with that came, of course, that if somebody is buying that much, then how come the value is standing still?
Well, That's a good question. Actually, I would love to ask Matt about the two questions on the technical stuff. And that is one, there was a post from Satoshi that said that Bitcoin SV is has the number two amount of users. That was from a website that Satoshi had mentioned, which is new to me. That's the first thing. And the second thing is like Satoshi claims, I wish he was here to add this, he's not, but that there was only $5 million in liquidity, apparently, or maybe less now, in BSV. So it's not like there's much available. It's only like 4 or 5 million. And I don't know, Matt, if you know about that or anybody else does, I'd be curious.
It made me wonder about, because I always hear that what gives BSV value is mainly transactions. And so then I wondered, well, okay, so if I go and buy, for 5 million, I don't know how, well, then it's one transaction, right? And so is that the thing that makes the big difference or what?
Liquidity. It's all about supply and demand. So, if there's no supply, then that's when there's the pressure on the price it can't survive. So apparently there's just not enough demand for the limited supply that there is. I mean, Matt might know better than I would, but that's what I've read is that it's only less than 5 million in liquidity from that if a whale were to buy BSV right now, it would only be about $5 million and it's gone.
Yeah, there's a direct link to kind of see what that liquidity is, but it's pretty obvious that it's been controlled for good reason. Like clearly out here in the West, in the U.S., you really can't get it. Like, luckily Rock Wallet came along, but I don't know. It just seems like a blatant attack against the West and the average Western investor in that regard. And it kind of makes you wonder if the BTC Ponzi was created just to be that kind of that type of Bitcoin that actually is worth hodling, because that's really all it's mostly good for. But what if BSV is just meant to be this P2P utility token, regardless of like 21 million supply? It makes you wonder, but I don't see how it can't go up even more in value than BTC ever has.
Yeah, it's funny. I had friends calling me trying to buy it when was it last week when it hit 30, 32, 33. And, I got, Rock Wallet, I tried as well. There's just no way. I wasn't successful at getting it on Rock Wallet. I don't know if anybody else was, but my friends couldn't either. So apparently it's, totally locked out. The only place was Senti that was selling was liquid Senti, and apparently that new place, the Orange Gateway, but we couldn't get verified out there in the US yet. There's too many errors, too many bugs. But Senti is the one. Bitcoin Ben, man, he's got the freaking best platform. So yeah. Well, if anybody else wants to chime in, let's do it. We added a lot of context on this book today, man. It was phenomenal. Mila, go ahead.
Yeah, that book sounds so amazing. I just spent some time today trying to find it. It took some time to find it on the German Amazon, but I finally did find it. So yeah, but yeah, I have this question still in my head. Like, so between, let's just say, BTC and BSV, right? The more people are buying the BTC, the more its value goes up. And is there a difference there between that and BSV? That on BSV, that's not what makes it go up. It's what? The other things, transactions or what?
Well,
Well, we have to understand that the market is completely manipulated in BTC, and it's going to
Yes,
it,
of course.
it goes up when they want it to go up, so they push the price up with wash trading and with injecting so-called money from Tether, and therefore the price goes up because there is more demand. So the price is, between the wash trading and the fake demand, then the price goes up. So this is what's happening, and BSV is going along with BTC because of the connection there too between the manipulators and the whole global crypto market. If you look at it, the crypto market is always basically following BTC.